folks, what's going on? Welcome to another edition of the Live Life Aggressively Show. This is Sincere Hogan, and got my man Mike Mahler on the other side. Hey man, what's going on? Kind of jealous right now. The weather out there is like pretty cool. Like it's cold in Vegas. Are you serious right now?
No, it's definitely not cold.
People love to exaggerate. I saw it was like in the 50s, and people were like, "Oh my God, it's cold in Vegas." I'm like, "Are you serious right now?" It was 23 in Texas 2 days ago. Meanwhile, it's 82 today, 2 days later. So yeah, suffice it to say, there's a lot of people.
Well, I mean, it reminds me when I visited my parents in Kenya, and it was 60 degrees out, maybe 55 at night, and all of the guards would have these long trench coats on and gloves, and they're standing around a fire. My brother and I are walking around with shorts and a t-shirt.
Not typical African weather, man.
Yeah, no, right now it's perfect. I mean, Vegas never really gets that cold by my standards. I grew up back east, Washington, D.C.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't even own a jacket. The most I have out here is maybe a flannel shirt or a thick flannel shirt, something like that. And I don't get cold easily either. If you have really good circulation, you don't get cold, to a point, obviously, if you're an ant.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're going to start off this year with definitely one of our most downloaded guests, if not our most downloaded guest, Christian Thibadeau. Christian, great to have you back on, man. Happy New Year.
Well, I'm listening to you guys. It's in the minuses here. I mean, I don't care how good your circulation is. You're going to get cold if you come to Canada.
Hey, I said to a point, man.
Well,
you can have that, man.
Way past here. Yeah.
But I mean, if it's 60 degrees and you're cold, you're unhealthy.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, come on. I mean, some weather, people that are always complaining about how cold they are. I mean, I know people where even sometimes it's summer here and someone walks into an air-conditioned room and they have to put a jacket on. They're like, "Oh, it's cold." It's like, come on. You just walked in from 120 degrees and you're cold already?
The last erection was probably 10 years ago.
Your last erection was 10 years ago? Is that what you said?
Well, I'm married. I've been married for 10 years, Mike.
Seems like the temperatures are not the only thing in a negative, Christian.
I gotta send you some of my tea booster, man. Come on.
Well, you're the one talking about how shrinkage actually helped your deadlift.
Well, I didn't say me specifically. I said in general that could happen. I always wear really tight MeUndies just to make sure I have good clearance. And one thing we were talking about before we started recording is the difference between being explosive and applying acceleration. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a very delineated difference that often is confusing. When you tell someone to lift the weight fast, they often think, okay, explode. Mm-hmm. But I think exploding only works for a certain fiber type, right? Like someone who's really fast twitch, they explode, it's going to work because they can move things quickly. Someone like me who's more slow twitch, I try to explode, it's not going to be powerful enough for me to get the weight from point A to point B. So I find that accelerating, trying to move the weight quickly, but also in a smooth manner, like deadlifting. If I try to explode in the deadlift, the weight will come off the ground maybe 2 inches, and then it stalls. And then I'm stuck in that position trying to finish it. Well, if I accelerate, I'll get it to my knees before it starts slowing down. And if I can get it to my knees, I don't care how heavy it is, I'll finish it.
Well, I think there's also other issues with the explode cue. First of all, right. I believe that exploding can only work in linear movements. And the deadlift, even though you think you're lifting in a straight line, you're not. You have a slight inward arc when you're lifting it. So if you explode, what happens, and I was actually coaching Canada's strongest man, Jean-François Caron, last weekend. I was coaching him on the snatch. And what I told him is that the moment you think I explode is the moment you stop controlling the barbell. Exploding is kind of like catapulting the weight in the air. And when that happens, the weight is moving straight up in the direction you're applying force. So if you try to explode, for example, on a deadlift off the floor, the bar will be enough forward to actually kill the exercise. Yeah. So any exercise where the movement is not strictly linear, you can think explode. You have to think of, as you mentioned, accelerate. And also, as you mentioned, if you can't produce enough momentum from that very small window of acceleration, then the bar will die on its way up. So, of course, that is one problem.
And with squats, I don't like to see sloppy technique where someone drops really fast and then try to bounce out of it. I think you should have a slow descent, controlled, pause at parallel or just below, and then drive out quickly.
I couldn't agree more. And so as much as the way I'm squatting right now, all my squats are done from pins from the bottom position.
Yeah, bottom position.
I either do zombie, like Frankenstein squat, so I'm like a front squat, but with the arms extended in front of me, so I can't cheat even 1 inch. And I from the bottom from pins, or I do Anderson squats, which are back squat with the bar starting on pins from the bottom. So that's how I'm squatting right now, because I have a very efficient stretch reflex. And I don't want to use it, otherwise I don't build my legs. And I've noticed that my legs have grown significantly, and I'm not sore after my workouts. Whereas in the past, when I would use the bounce, I couldn't squat more than once, sometimes twice in a 10-day period, because my vastus lateralis would get super sore, like at the point of the tendon insertions.
Now, the bottom position it's a really interesting sensation, because now it starts mimicking the same feel you have on a deadlift.
Exactly.
Where
so the
in one
movement
hand,
actually improves two different lifts.
Yeah, on one hand, mentally, it takes away some of the fear, because with a barbell squat, when you unrack it from the pins, you take a step back, and it feels really heavy.
Yeah.
You're trying not to fall over. You're trying to catch your balance. And then when you're lowering it with all that weight on your back, if it feels heavy, then psychologically you've already impaired doing the concentric with full effectiveness. While with a bottom position squat, obviously it's harder because you don't have the stretch reflex.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also don't have the fear, because it's either going to go or it isn't. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go. Just like a deadlift.
Just stay there. You can't injure yourself doing that. So it's you're not afraid, of course.
But you don't have to worry about having a spot or anything like that.
I think that many people, they just actually suck at walking out with a barbell.
Yeah, that's a skill in itself.
Just like, for example, we once talked about the low back squat versus the low bar back squat versus high bar back squat. Right. And people, when they try the first time the low bar back squat, they think the bar is going to crush them, because they're just not good at creating tension in their upper body. Right. So they feel that the bar is going to crush them. You have to be good at creating tension up there. So it's the same thing. If somebody is not good at creating tension, when he's going to walk out with a squat, it feels like the bar is 2,000 pounds. And that castrates you before you even start the lift.
Right. That's definitely true. I mean, there's so much psychological components, so many psychological components to training. I mean, if your mind doesn't believe you can lift something, you're not going to lift it. And if you take it off the pins and it feels heavy, it's not going to get easier from there.
Right. And then the fact you got to take a couple of steps back, it just feels like it's just pressing down on every step. So it's just taking away that confidence just a little bit more every time, man.
Absolutely.
One thing Ed Cohen does is he takes one step back, right, after he takes the bar off the pin, and then he takes one more step to line up, and that's it. And I found that some people make the mistake of taking way too many steps back.
Yeah, I'm like, where are you going?
Exactly.
Are you moonwalking or what?
Because now you have the fear of, okay, I don't want to go all out because I'm not going to be able to walk it back in.
Exactly.
I mean, that takes away from performance as well.
Yeah, it's in the back of your mind.
Right.
Yeah,
even having a spotter makes a huge difference. You have a friend who's a capable spotter. Like when I did a PR max at the end of last year, I was fortunate that a good friend of mine at the gym just happened to be there. I'm like, oh, cool, man, can you spot me on this? And just having him there, knowing that he can help if needed, made a huge difference as opposed to when I'm doing it on my own. So yeah, I have the safety bars out, but still, you can still fall over.
I've seen many people get injured by dropping a squat that they missed because sometimes they fall on their knees, but you know how your ankle is going to react. You can actually twist your knees by buckle in. Right. The worst accident I've seen, and I've seen that twice with the same girl. I've never seen it in my life. I've seen it happen twice with this girl. She was doing a back squat 1RM, CrossFit girl I worked with actually. And she had long hair, so she tied her hair up in a ponytail so that the hair wouldn't get rolled up in the bar. But somehow probably one hair got rolled up around the bar, so she missed her PR. She tried to drop the barbell back, but her hair got caught up in that bar, and that pulled her head down, but her feet stayed on the ground. Yeah,
wow.
So she twisted her ankle bad. She couldn't walk for about 2 or 3 weeks. That actually happened to her again, like 3 months afterwards. But she didn't get seriously injured that time. But still pretty scary when you see it. I mean, the head just got swing back.
Yeah, that's I've been in that situation. That's why usually like on squat, I bring all my hair to the front because my hair is long. So
I have no
because
hair,
so like, yeah, you don't have these problems. I know. So, but that's one of those things, man. Because even if I'm just doing, I don't know, man. Just even sometimes just doing like just for one minute doing a low bar. Even just doing it then, it's like I can still feel it, even though I have a lot more of my back involved and less hair to have to worry about, and I don't have to worry about the hair getting pulled and pulling my neck back. It's still in the back of your mind. If it's ever happened once, no matter what position the bar was in, you're still going to think about that. You're still a little traumatized by that. So one of the things, I just bring all the hair to the front, just kind of do that parting of the Red Sea from the back there, and then go from there, man, because you can't ever forget about it. That's one of the reasons why I don't like wearing belts whenever I'm doing squats or doing deadlifts, because one thing about having that belt, my hair, like as soon as I'm getting in position, and as soon as I'm coming up, naturally my hair slides down my back and goes into the belt, and then the belt just naturally grabs my hair if it's pulled into a ponytail. And so it's hard for me to focus on deadlift when I've got like this belt pulling my head back, and I'm feeling like a Pez dispenser at the moment. So it's just one of those things, man. Little things like that, just people have to think about. And getting back to what you were saying, for some reason, as soon as you said that, the first thing that came to mind was a lot of the lifters in CrossFit when you said it, even before you said that she was a CrossFit lifter, and it just seems like there's a lot of this reenactment of the world, wide world of sports type things where you lift and then you fall and collapse, and then it's like this very dramatic fall that I see so many lifters doing. And it's like, there's no glory in that, man.
No.
So there was no glory in that during the wild world of sports back in the 70s. That's why I was on the part of the agony of defeat portion of that whole little. Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's nothing courageous about missing miserably. I mean, it's just and then if you keep missing lifts often, you're just programming yourself for failure.
Personally,
so you expect
I honestly don't, but it's not true. I did miss like a squat from pins, but just because the bar wasn't set up properly. But I honestly don't remember missing a back squat because personally, I'm going to have bad technique way before I can miss the weight, and I don't accept personally doing a lift that I don't consider technically correct. So I probably stopped maybe 20 pounds before I could still lift like 20 pounds more, but it wouldn't be pretty. But to me, it doesn't count. But with those now with the social media, internet warrior kind of guys, they just care about how much weight they're lifting. How many people do the fishing rod deadlift on social media? Yeah, sure, you're deadlifting 600, but you probably shorten your lifespan by about 3 years. I'm only 5'8". I don't want to have to lose like 2 vertebrae and only like measure 5'6" now.
Well, I always say it's not what you can lift; it's what you can keep lifting over time.
Exactly.
So I rather
and
be
how
able
you
to
look when you're lifting it.
Yeah, exactly. You want it to look nice. I mean, you can always tell whether you can. I mean, you just look at someone's facial expression.
Yeah.
If it's good technique, it's all in the face. If you see someone like their teeth is grinding and they got this snarling look in their face, obviously it doesn't feel good. I mean, to a point, sometimes you finish off a lift with a scream or something. It's a PR. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying completely. But I'd rather have a 500-pound deadlift for the next 20 years than be able to deadlift 600 once, but I hurt myself.
And keep telling that story. Keep telling that story for the next 20 years. Like, I remember 20 years ago, I hit 600 pounds. Like, yeah. And what happened after that? It's like, I stopped deadlifting.
People should never talk about what you used to be able to do because it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. It's gone.
Exactly.
What you can do right now is the only thing that matters.
Eventually, you're going to be stronger than every single world's strongest man competitor because when you're going to be the same age, they're going to be deadlifting like 220.
Yeah.
They're going to be seriously messed up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I think too many people make the mistake of no pain, no gain type mentality, right? So if the rep doesn't look ugly, you're not pushing hard enough.
Yeah, but you actually see the same thing with nutrition, right? I mean, think about your health. It's so unsexy now. But trust me, once you're like 35, 40, you have high blood pressure, It's affecting your gains. You can't train as hard because you have inflammation everywhere just because, it's go big or go home. So you ate like 10 hamburgers every single day because eating big gets you strong, right? Well, maybe. You hold all that water because of the sodium content, because it's pro-inflammatory. You look big in a shirt because of the inflammation. That gives you leverage to lift heavy weight, but trust me, you will be messed up at 35, 40, and you won't be able to lift a weight without feeling pain, being in pain, just because you didn't take care of your health.
Can you go for a hike? Yeah, can you walk around the block? Can you go for a hike without breathing hard? You can see inflammation in someone's face at a certain age when they haven't taken care of themselves.
Exactly. They're all red and flushed.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, but here's the paradox of that. You know, since we were just talking about the weather, so obviously at the time we were recording this, it's winter. Here's the paradox of wintertime right now. So for the experienced lifter, this is when they want to hibernate and stay inside and really eat and bulk up. It's bulking season. You know, and to the beginning exerciser, can't say lifter just yet, these are the people who are kind of like starting off with these New Year's resolutions, and they're starving themselves, and they think they can go in and get strong, you know, within the next 3 to 4 weeks or whatever else, and do that without eating. So they're on all these crazy diets. They're trying to go in. They're working out like twice a day, every day for about 2 weeks, because by the 15th of January is over. They're done. The membership special is over. They're like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going back to eating pizza. You know, but like I said, the experienced lifters over there stuffing their face, and you know, it's like, I know, leave me alone. Don't judge me. They're posting pictures of their gut now. You know, 6 months ago they were posting pictures of their ass all on social media. Now they're proud to post a picture of their guts and their man tits and everything else, because you know, I'm going to get rid of that. So then they're going to end up doing some other type of eating disorder, like in the spring, to get ready for a competition where they're going to end up starving themselves to try to get rid of all that winter weight and bulking or whatever else. So they're not the best examples to a lot of the new lifters.
No, because oftentimes just trying to get rid of all that excess baggage, you end up at the same level you started with. I mean, either muscle-wise or strength-wise.
Yeah, and it's not healthy at all. You know, your body's like, your organs are like, dude, screw you. Okay, it's like enough.
People don't realize that. I mean, I know, because I was that guy. The guy who ate, if it fits your macros, that's how I ate. I mean, I was all about excesses. I really want to get bigger, stronger, and I honestly, honest to God, wish I could go back and change it. Now I'm doing it the smart way. I don't have a choice because my body will not hold up if I don't. But if I had been different when I was younger, I would be much stronger and healthier today. And to me, that is so important. And you mentioned that, and Lee Boyce said something really smart. I mean, if you are planning on lifting for your whole life because it's your passion, who cares what you lift in 6 weeks? You're going to be doing this for your whole life. I mean, what my inspiration, I posted this on my social media recently, is a guy I used to train with 20 years ago, about roughly. He was 67. Still competing in Olympic weightlifting. Now he's 83, and he's still competing. And I posted a video. He's doing a 245-pound front squat at 83 years of age. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And that's training for longevity right there. And I think that's the word people tend to ignore is longevity. Everybody wants something right now, and they want to do that little, you know, in the next 30 days, or, you know, and get this much in the next, 16 weeks and whatever else. I'm like, oh, so are you going to die, or do you have terminal cancer and you trying to hit this goal before you die or whatever else? What is this?
Well, I mean, at the same time that you have to have a sense of urgency, otherwise nothing gets done. You know, like I have very precise goals every year. I don't have this. Well, if it doesn't happen this year, I'll do it next year, because you're never going to get it done. You know, like last year I had extremely precise goals, and I either hit them or I made progress towards them, and that's a success in my mind.
Yeah, but the difference
is like, well, I'm just going to keep working on this and see where it goes.
Yeah, but the difference is you have ongoing goals. A lot of times, folks who are just getting into this, they see these things. They're like, okay, I'm gonna do this in 30 days because that's what they think.
I agree.
And they don't have a plan after those 30 days. It's like, okay, now what? You know,
well, they don't think they need to do anything after those 30 days. That's the problem. People think they can work out for 90 days and then never have to work out again. That's the mistake.
I see the same thing with in bodybuilding and figure competition, but the same thing holds true for pretty much everybody. I mean, all these people, they have that one goal, which is to compete in a physique competition. But for 16 weeks, that's their whole life, really. And they train hard, but they don't plan what's going on after that. I've seen many people get almost obese, and they actually, I've known several people, once they competed once, they actually stopped training because they can't find the motivation to train again because they didn't learn to have, inner motivation. You have to
that's the problem with competitions. I know people go, if I don't have a competition, I don't have the motivation to work out. I go, well, that's a problem. That's a problem, man. Because you shouldn't need that external. You shouldn't need that external recognition or motivation. Exactly. It should be intrinsic. It should be something you do for yourself. I mean, you should train for yourself, ultimately. Yes. You're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for anyone else. You're not doing it for your wife, your kids, your neighbors, recognition.
I hate to tell this to people. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but to be honest, nobody cares about you. Honestly.
Exactly.
Nobody cares about you. No. I mean, people will click like on a picture you post on social media because it doesn't require any effort. Trust me, they don't care. The only person that cares
they're actually doing that for themselves. They're doing it for themselves. They're not even thinking about you when they click like. It's like if your ass is out, they're doing it because they like ass, and ass turns them on. So it's for their own benefit when they click. It's not even for your benefit.
And they're hoping it leads to something more. Like, I'm going to start off with liking her, and then we're going to do a private message, and then we're going to meet up in person.
Man, I was going to mention the exact same thing.
Exactly.
I mean, believe me. I mean, that's the main motivation for why. Look, the only reason I have social media accounts is because I have a business. I didn't have a business, I wouldn't have any of that shit. So I always have to wonder about motivations of people who use all this shit, yet they don't have a business or anything they're trying to promote. It's like, what the fuck are you on here for? And 90% of guys is you're trying to meet broads.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like, it's a cheaper OkCupid for them. They don't have to pay for a membership by doing that. Well, I don't need OkCupid. I have Facebook.
They don't even want to actually meet the girls. They want to feel desired. They want the girls, hey, how you doing? You look great on your picture. They just want, they want to feel. I mean, most guys, they have an affair not because they have an overly active sex drive. Actually, most guys don't. Most guys have affairs because they need to feel desired and admired. That's a basic need of most men. Right?
Absolutely.
Well, most women too, but men have.
Human beings here, and so guys like to say that women are attention whores. Dudes are too. So you want attention. You want half the time. That's the reason why you're sitting up there and you work on bench press 24/7 and you don't worry about doing any type of rows or anything like that because you're doing bicep curls because that's what you want women to look at first because you want to make sure that you see them looking at you. You don't want to have to sit there and guess. If you walk past them, it's like you got a well-built back and a tight ass. You don't want to have to guess like, I wonder if she's looking at my ass. Otherwise, you got to turn around and then embarrass yourself when you get caught. And she look like
you see five guys looking is the only thing you got to see. You're not going to see any chick looking. She's busy working out, man. She's not looking at your ass. Guys are so stupid. They lift something heavy. They think women in the room are impressed. They're not looking. They don't give a fuck what you're doing.
Unless they're moving.
But at the same time though, use that for motivation. If you think in your mind that they are, then use that illusion to have a better performance. So I mean. It's all about content.
But eventually you still have to find something in you to get the passion for training.
Of course. Exactly. You should be able to hit a PR in your garage by yourself with no one around, right? No one's ever going to know but you.
No.
And you still pulled it off. You still pulled it off. That's when you know.
You didn't video it. I don't believe it. Well, you don't have to believe it. I know I did.
Exactly.
That's my opinion.
It's like, I didn't do it for you, dipshit. I don't have to document everything I fucking do. I think going back to nutrition, I think a lot of people overstate eating big, and here's what I mean by that.
Man,
for example, my last workout I did, I put together this workout to improve my deadlift and squat, which focuses on singles, right? So it's not quite rest pause, longer breaks than that, but it's in that direction of rest pause training. So I'm doing, let's say, 7 sets of 1 with 505 pounds, right? Then I did glute ham raises. Then I did some incline dumbbell pressing, not high volume, did some rows, stretching, some kettlebell pressing. Okay, so not a huge volume program. Do I really need to go home and eat big after that workout?
No, you don't.
The answer is no, but people do. People go, okay, do I need 1,000 calories and 50 grams of protein after that workout? Of course not.
Yeah. But
people wonder why they get fat.
They want to believe that they do because they want a reason to eat crap. That's all it is. And I think that if anything, eating big like that just creates stress on your body.
It's detrimental. Exactly.
Digestion
because honestly, your growth hormone, first of all, and your central nervous system, if you really went all after it during your workout, it's not even trying to hear you trying to eat right after that. It'll take a couple hours, man, because you're still so kind of ramped up and jacked up, man. It's just your stomach is nervous at that point. So even trying to eat like this, that's why so many people are like, man, I try to have a big shake afterward, but I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Yeah, dude, it's like your growth hormone and your stomach's like, dude, screw that. I've got other things.
And think about it. After your training, you still want to send blood to those muscles to get rid of the metabolites, to clear lactic acid, to help the body repair itself. If you have one big-ass meal right after you train, all that blood is going to your digestive system, getting away from the muscles. It actually slows down recovery. And your body
what you do? You know what the best thing to take after a workout is? You take my systemic enzyme product, Restorzon. It works best on an empty stomach. Load up your body with systemic enzymes right after your workout so that you start the healing process. That's what you fucking need after a workout.
And think about
Not
it.
a protein shake
with digest properly and absorb food. You're going to stuff them with 2,000 calories. They can't even absorb that. They can't even digest that.
Right. It's what you absorb, not what you're consuming. That really matters.
One thing that I really believe in, I believe in actually keeping protein in. I mean, we talked about this in the past. The number one mistake that bodybuilders, strength athletes, and athletes in general make is eating too much protein. They believe that the amount of protein you take in is directly related to how much muscle you're building. It's crap. In fact, I now believe that having too much protein too often actually reduces how much muscle you can build. Let's look at it this way. Several amino acids directly trigger anabolism. That's a fact. Several amino acids increase the muscle building processes. The problem is, if you're constantly eating huge amount of protein, your level of amino acids is always high. Now, the few amino acids that need to be spiked to create anabolism are lost in a sea of amino acids. You can't get that peak that triggers anabolism because it's always getting lost in that whole thing. You need just to keep a small baseline of blood amino acids to never lack any of the essential amino acids. And you need to periodically spike the anabolic amino acids throughout the day. So I believe in keeping a fairly low protein intake, but during the day spiking the anabolic amino acids.
You know what's interesting is I consumed less protein last year than I ever did. Now I hit more PRs last year than I ever did either. I definitely proved that you don't need as much protein as you think you do.
The same thing. I did a photo shoot in November for my new website, tibarmy.com. I did a photo shoot, and I never ate so little protein because my kidneys are been hurt from years of abuse. I've never taken so little protein. I never looked that good. That's the best I've ever looked in my life.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think one of the things is a lot of the people look up to, like Charles Poliquin, who I respect a lot. He's a great guy. He's been on our show. You know, he's a strong proponent of protein. He still does the 2 grams per pound, and a lot of other people agree with that or even recommend more. So that message keeps getting perpetuated. I mean, people always prioritize protein. People who work out.
How much protein do I need because I'm this, that, and the other? And then on that note, when you bring that up, like with Charles and other experts that so many people look up to, it's more about them looking for someone to validate their current beliefs. As with anything in life,
that's right.
Anything polarized, like, okay, I want to consume a lot of protein, so let me seek out the person that'll validate this belief that I have, and not make me feel bad about it.
Secure in your beliefs.
Exactly, So, and that's what it comes down to. So, yeah, it may work well for him, but not necessarily for you. You're walking around like,
well, does it
I can't
really
lose.
work
I can't.
well for him though? Has he ever tried it? I mean, and I love Charles.
We don't know if it works well for him.
We don't know.
That's the other thing. Yeah, we don't know. Because he would have to try something else for us to compare what works. I mean, don't know what works well.
If you, for example, let's say instead of taking in 300 grams of protein, what if you take 120 grams, but you have 4 spikes of the essential amino acids during the day? My guess is that you would gain a lot more, first of all, because you're not overloading your digestive system and you're creating those spikes in the anabolic amino acids. You need spikes, but you can't have spikes if the whole protein is always elevated in your bloodstream, because the body doesn't.
So what are you recommending? Branched chain aminos or some kind of amino acid powder?
Actually, I like the essential amino acids. I know that Dr. Serrano is coming up with.
Yeah, Serrano has muscle synergy. Muscle synergy is his product.
Exactly. No, I really like that product. It's amazing. People who don't want to really invest a lot of money in a specialized essential amino acid blend could always go with the branched chain amino acids that would actually work. But to me, it has some downsides in that leucine, for example, really spikes insulin release, which is not something you really want. It works, but I really prefer a blend of essential amino acids.
Yeah, you don't want an insulin surge on an empty stomach.
No,
that's for
exactly.
Sure.
Now, actually, I once had an hypoglycemic crisis only by taking leucine. It was in the morning. I was training a client at 5 a.m. Didn't have time to have breakfast. Well, actually, I didn't really eat breakfast because I was intermittent fasting at the time. And I took just leucine supplement in the morning for some reason. Don't ask. I was training, I think, but I skipped the workout. Anyway, I had 10 grams of leucine, and after 45 minutes, I'm starting to get woozy hypoglycemic symptoms. I really freaked out. I thought I had the H1N1 flu because it was running around at the time. I called my wife. I think I have the flu. Just come pick me up quick. And finally, I realized it was just being hypoglycemic, so I took a Gatorade and felt better. But leucine is a lot more powerful than people realize as far as releasing insulin.
You know what really messes that up? I've had a similar experience with a different mechanism. I had one of those sugary coffee drinks, Starbucks, years ago, right? A Frappuccino or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so basically high caffeine and high sugar, two things that release insulin. Yeah. And man, I had a crash. I almost felt like it wasn't safe for me to drive. I was driving and all of a sudden I had a serious crash, and I was like, whoa, I got to pull over right now.
But that just, to me, the example I just mentioned, it just amplifies that individual amino acids have very powerful effects as long as there's not a sea of competing amino acids available. For example, if I want to sleep, if I'm on an empty stomach, if I take glycine, I relax and go to bed very easily. But if I have a big protein meal and I have the same glycine, it doesn't do anything. Because it gets lost in a sea of amino acids. If you want the individual amino acids that can have pharmacological properties, then they need to be on a state where you don't have an excess amount of protein so that the body will recognize the spike in that specific amino acid.
Yeah, with tyrosine, I like to take 3 to 5 grams an hour before training, obviously empty stomach. Otherwise, you're not going to feel a thing. If I put that in my protein, if I put it in my protein shake, you won't feel a thing. Exactly.
No, it's completely lost. That's why people say, well, why would I need to take the BCAAs? It's in my whey protein. Yeah, but it's hidden in the sea of amino acids. It won't work. Even if you had 5 grams of BCAAs to a shake, it will not work.
Right.
It's getting lost in the sea of protein. So you really don't, I don't use whey protein. Now, I will just use I will have, for example, 3 meals that have actual full, complete protein, but that's enough to have my baseline to never be deficient in any amino acid. And then I spike with essential amino acids when I need a specific effect. If I need to trigger a higher level of neural activity, I'll take tyrosine. If I need to inhibit my nervous system so I can lower cortisol and relax better, I'll have glycine. If I want a spike in anabolism, then I have the essential amino acids. So it really, that way, if you don't always have a very high level of amino acid, of protein in your blood, you can actually create pharmacological effect from individual amino acids.
Yeah. Tryptophan's another good one, right? 5-HTP.
Absolutely.
But if you take that with a meal, nothing.
It won't work.
Yeah, exactly. Empty stomach right before you go to sleep, bam. Puts you in that relaxed state.
Exactly.
Yep.
Not so true. Tyrosine, definitely. I've tried tyrosine with meals before. You don't notice a thing. Empty stomach, and it has to be like a real empty stomach too. It can't be something where maybe 30 minutes after a meal you're not going to eat.
People, I used to do a lot of intermittent fasting, and people always say, "Well, how can you train on an empty stomach?" Well, trust me, if you want to be amped up for a workout, do it after 14 hours of intermittent fasting with tyrosine and a very small amount of caffeine. I mean, you will break records.
Plus, most people are so fat, they're not on an empty stomach. You have so much fat reserves that you can take a week off from eating and you still are not on an empty stomach.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's like, who are you kidding? It's like, I'm starving. It's like, no, you're not. It's not possible.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I was talking to a good friend of mine. He's a power lifter. And he changed his diet recently. At first, it was really hard for him because he honestly thought he was eating like 3,500 calories a day. So I actually gave him a diet that was like 3,200, and he felt like he was dying. So I thought, well, just give me a journal of what you used to eat, and it was really closer to 6,000. Well, you don't need 6,000. You're like 220 pounds.
Yeah,
I'm 220, and I barely take in 2,800, and that's more than enough for me. If you feel hungry on 3,200 calories, and you're not like, it's just because your brain learn that you need that amount of food because that's always what you give. Now, he's back trying to gain muscle, and he said, I can't eat anymore. I'm never hungry. It's because you don't need it. You just created an artificial need that didn't exist before.
Right. I think one of the biggest mistakes is training yourself to eat when not hungry.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
It creates an extremely bad habit of just snacking. Now you're looking at the clock like, oh, it's 3 o'clock, time to eat something. It's like, really? Are you hungry or are you just looking at the fucking clock? Yeah, exactly. It's a job. It's not pleasurable at all.
You're in the business of eating. It's always last
and if you're not hungry, there's a reason for it.
And a lot of people are pros. A lot of people are pros at that business. They excel.
Oh yeah, yeah. I always my niece was like, I'm bored. I'm hungry. I'm just like, are you hungry or are you bored?
Exactly.
I always have to ask them like.
And overeating is actually one of the few things that's been proven to speed up the aging process.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
It's like blue collar work. Okay, it's like working in a minefield for the most part because you're stressing yourself out internally just as much.
Also, what happens?
You're still thinking it's probably the same amount of chemicals.
And also, what happens is that every time you release a high level of insulin, you activate mTOR. mTOR actually that's one thing. Activating mTOR, if you want to grow muscle, that's fine. You can do it with training. That's why bodybuilders take in insulin. It actually activates mTOR. But the problem is that you don't only activate mTOR that affect the muscle. If you're training, yes, that's the only mTOR pathway you're activating. But if I'm constantly eating food that spikes insulin, I'm activating mTOR 24/7. And do a search. Anybody listening to the podcast right now, do a search, mTOR aging process. It's totally been proven that activating mTOR speeds up the aging process. So if you
it's kind of like growth hormone, right? Optimal growth hormone is very effective, but if it's too high, now it has deleterious consequences.
It can speed up the development of cancerous cells, for example.
Right, exactly. That's why
if you want to slow down the aging process, IGF-1 cannot be high 24/7. mTOR cannot be activated 24/7. So if you constantly have elevated insulin levels because you're overeating food, then you're going to just speed up the aging process. That's a fact.
It's similar to cortisol, right? We need a good amount of cortisol to be motivated and get our day going. But if you're constantly on this cortisol ride, now it's basically self-cannibalizing whatever your goals are.
Yeah, and it actually can eventually lead.
Brain and body. Alzheimer and cortisol are more, to me it's an obvious connection, but now research is backing up that connection very clearly, as well as insulin resistance. Alzheimer is often referred to as type 3 diabetes.
Actually, I was going to mention that exactly. I was actually talking to a friend of mine about that because both our grandmothers died of Alzheimer. Well, not of, but they had Alzheimer's when they died.
Yeah.
So, it's been shown that there's a very strong connection. They're now calling it diabetes type 3.
Yeah. Yeah, and stress can cause insulin resistance. It's not always just diet.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that are in this constant stress state all the time.
You always feel flat and old water.
Yeah.
And that is definitely a mark of being insulin resistant.
Yeah, because sometimes people eat really healthy and they still have these hormonal issues, and it's not the diet. It's their mentality. It's something else, some other underlying unresolved issue that's constantly.
A good example. I was trading this figure a girl that wanted to do a figure show for the first time. And normally I can get somebody ready to do a figure show, unless she's like very fat to start with. I can get pretty much anybody in decent shape ready for a figure show in 14, 16 weeks. And she was not fat to start with. She was actually fairly athletic. It took 8 months to get in shape because of her job. She was a police officer working shifts. So always and she just had like relationship problems. Her house burned down during the contest prep. So she stuck with the diet for the whole prep. She stuck with the training regardless of what was happening. But because of the stress, we had to take a more gradual approach because the body was just not responding to it, to the diet and training, because she became insulin resistant and had a lot of inflammation because of the stress. Inflammation and insulin resistance are the two worst things that can happen to your body.
Yeah. And if insulin resistance is not always
bad, but
but it's not always people that are overweight that have insulin resistance. A lot of people who look seemingly fit have insulin resistance. What's happening is they're managing the symptoms because of their training and other things.
Correct.
And so they've never bothered to check whether they have it because they're looking in the mirror and go, okay, I can see my abs and I feel strong in the gym, so there's no way I'm insulin resistant. And then they get some blood work done. They're like, well, wait a minute, how is this possible? So you're managing to keep this stuff controlled, but it's a battle of attrition. At some point, you're going to lose that battle.
Yeah, and it's genetic to some extent. I mean, I use myself as an example. I always tolerate carbs pretty badly, and I believe that the saying, the leaner you are, the more carbs you can have. So when I prepare for the photo shoot, I didn't have much carbs, lots of green veggies, and I felt great. No aches and pains at all. Now after that, I started eating like less strictly. And all the aches and pains came back. I totally believe that it is due to inflammation from me not tolerating carbs well. I mean, of course, not like fruits and all that stuff that actually are good for me, but having like pastries once in a while, bread once in a while, that created inflammation because my body was just not tolerating that well.
Maybe it's more because those are processed foods that are causing the inflammatory response rather than just carbs and junk. Well, I think a lot of times with macronutrients, it's if you go really high fat, then you have to go low carb. Otherwise, it's disastrous. If you go really low fat, you have to go higher carbs. Now, a lot of people with the American diet and processed foods, you now have the ability to do high fat and high carb, which doesn't exist in nature. Like if you eat naturally whole foods, you can't do that.
Totally.
But you can do it because of the way food is processed, and that's when you have
got people that worry about
high fat
causes.
The high fat, they don't use the carbs as well because of the high.
What I'm saying, they start adding high protein to that because, got to have my protein. Even though they're consuming high fat and high carbs with everything else. So now everything is fucking high. Everything's high. Then you got high blood pressure and high A1C number.
You desensitize your body to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people just eat too much, even people who work out. Like you were saying, Christian, I think people would be shocked how little I eat each day. I mean, I don't starve myself. I eat as much as I want. It's just not that much compared to what people think someone my size would eat. They're like, you're 200 pounds, 6 feet tall. You must eat a ton every day. It's like, nah, I eat as much as I want. I never deprive myself. But it's just not that much.
My wife always calls me out on how little I eat.
Mine too.
Well, I'm sure you are eating something in secret. No, I just don't eat that much because I'm honestly eating much less than she is. And she's like 130 pounds.
I eat a lot at dinner, but I don't eat much during the day. So when you add it all up, it's not that much.
I have one big meal. That's pretty much it.
I can eat a lot at that dinner, though. I can clear out a buffet at that dinner, especially if I worked out that day. But it's just in the context of the day, it's still not that much.
More of my own neurological nature is more toward. I don't like to say bulimic side, but I'm not bulimic. But I like to be satisfied, and I don't need to eat often. Yeah. Actually, I do a lot worse psychologically if you force me to have many smaller meals in a day. And I honestly want to kill myself. It just
it's just irritating.
Like I got stuff to do, man. I have things to do.
Exactly.
I don't feel like having to stop and eat. So I tend to go more toward, it's like in the very years ago when it first came, like the Warrior Diet, it made sense to me. I'm like, well, I was already doing this. You put a name on something I was already doing. It just makes sense.
And most people, they just get sluggish after they eat. And you don't want to feel that way. If I have a small amount of food, like for example, if I have some berries and maybe nuts, then I'll feel fine. But if I have a real meal, don't ask me to do anything requiring any intellectual capacities or physical capacities because I'm no good.
Oh yeah, I almost pass out sometimes. I mean, just from being relaxed, not because I had this blood sugar crash. You're just in this really relaxed state after your big meal. You're like, all right.
That's how it should be. That's how it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
That meal is actually that, and that's also why personally I don't get the old French thing that you have to eat big in the morning and very small in the evening.
I can't.
The opposite.
I can't, man.
It's the opposite.
Who's hungry in the morning? Who's that hungry in the morning?
You're in a relaxation state after a stressful day.
Who's that hungry in the morning?
That's the whole king, queen, and pauper philosophy. Start your day off eating like a king, then like a queen, then finish the day like a pauper. I'm like, dude,
doesn't make sense.
I can't just wake up eating a big
level are sky high.
Yeah, why not let genuine hunger dictate how much you eat and when?
Well, the problem is
I'm talking genuine
most
hunger.
People are so desensitized, as we mentioned earlier. They have trained themselves to always be hungry. That's the big issue. They need to
and there's also a fear.
Body.
There's also a fear of being hungry. Like, I'm hungry. I'm gonna start cannibalizing muscle. I'm gonna die.
I have a funny story about that. I remember I told you when I was younger, every dumb shit you hear on the internet, like there's some keyboard warrior, I was that guy, right? I remember I was playing football. I was like 19, and we were having this party with a few friends from the team, and we ran out of beer. So somebody, Christian, go buy us some beer. So I'm not going to walk to buy some beer. I'm going to lose mass, man. So I didn't want to go to the grocery store because I didn't want to lose muscle. That's how dumb I was. I'm not saying I'm smarter, but I know that walking to a grocery store won't lead to muscle loss.
Well, that explains why explains why your girlfriend at the time broke up with you. She's like, "Come on, Christian, let's go to bed."
I don't
want to waste that energy.
I was 21, so I was still 2 years away from having my first sexual experience.
You're like, "No, I got squats tomorrow. I can't get laid tonight. It'll take away from my squat workout tomorrow."
Leg day, girl, leg day. What the hell is wrong?
My legs are gonna feel weak if I do that.
Exactly. That was me though. That's exactly how I was. But the funny people, you could probably go 3 days without eating and not really lose any muscle.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because last week I did a green veggies only cleanse. So basically I use a supplement called Ultra Inflamex to reduce inflammation. It's very good on the digestive system. And I only ate green veggies for 4 days. Well, after the 4th day, I actually beat a record on the Frankenstein front squat from pins. So it's not like I lost muscle eating only veggies for 4 days. So you won't lose muscle if you go 6 hours without eating, trust me.
Exactly. It's the one thing that people that they should be worried about is the one thing they don't consume enough of, and that's water. They're not drinking enough water.
Exactly. I was going to mention, people start to feel flat during the day. Do you feel that their muscles are getting flatter? I need to eat, I'm losing muscle. You're not losing muscle, you're dehydrated. That's why you're feeling flat.
Right.
When I did my photo shoot, right, I was dehydrating to look good. So in the morning, I felt like I was 150 pounds. I'm losing all my muscle, man. So I started to eat to try to fill out. Newsflash, I still felt flat after eating a lot. That's because it's not the carbs or the lack of carbs making you flat. It's the fact that you're not holding any water in your muscle that is making you flat. You're not losing muscle, you're losing water.
Yeah. I also find if carbs are too low, you don't have that filled out look either. Like the muscle bellies look flat.
Which is more, again, water.
That's true, but that's because you're not holding the water in the muscle belly.
Exactly. You don't get the pump as much when you're working out and so forth. You don't have that filled out look, which is all. I don't train for any of that necessarily, but I'm not going to say I don't like it when it happens. It's fun.
But there's a use to it, though.
There is, no doubt.
Because when you feel, let's say I'm doing a bench press, for example. Well, if I don't feel a slight pump in my pectorals, then I know that maybe something's wrong with my form.
Right.
So it tells you which muscle the exercise is working. So if you use the pump properly, it can actually tell you a lot about your muscle dominance and what muscle you need to be working on.
That's why some more bad advice we often hear is, it's not muscles, it's movements. It's like, look, man.
Yeah, of course.
If you don't engage the muscles, there is going to be no movement. All right. So it's just dumb. I mean, also, if you're training for size and strength, then when I do a military press and I'm focused, if I want to get my shoulders bigger, triceps bigger, then I want to feel those muscles working. I'm not focused as much on the weight, moving the weight from point A to point B. I'm focused on engaging the lats, engaging the triceps, feeling the shoulders, press it out, all of that stuff. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. But you have this really pretentious, condescending attitude now of like, we're not bodybuilders, we train movements, not muscles. It's like, that's why you look like shit. That's why you look like shit.
But you know how I am. So I'm all about correcting weaknesses.
Like, come on.
If you want to improve your movement, let's talk their language, right? You want to improve your movements. Fine. But improving movements mean that you have to fix the weak link. And feeling the muscles working is one of the best way to diagnose which muscles are holding you back and what exercises you need to fix those weaknesses, those problems. So if I'm doing a squat and all I feel is a slight pump in my quads, nothing in my glute, hamstring, and the lower back, then I know that I need to fix something because only 25% of the muscles involved are working. Right.
I mean, with deadlifts, I often feel it in my torso more than anywhere else, so I know I'm engaging my abs. So if I'm not able to move the weight, I know that's not the weak link or the weak part of the execution. I'm utilizing that for sure. Often I'm sore in the midsection the next day.
Correct.
So I like what you're saying. It's like you have to feel the movement in the context of knowing what muscles are doing what, so you know where the weak link is.
Yeah, how the movement feels and what it looks like tells you what you need to use to fix those problems and get the movement better.
Well, it's like someone saying, I do a military press and I don't feel it in my shoulders at all. My pecs are sore the next day. And then you watch them lift it and they're pushing it 4 feet out in front of them. You know? It's like, well, you're not doing a military press. You're doing an incline press standing, which is okay. But if your goal is to move as much weight as possible, but if your goal is to make your shoulders bigger and stronger, then you got to do something. You got to do a more correct straight overhead and pop your head out the window type technique.
Yeah, I think
people love to just get into these camps.
It's a whole either-or situation. It's like,
exactly.
It's either movement or it's either muscle. It's like, no, it's no either or. It's like, come on, man. Does the word synergy mean anything to you? It's just like, come on. It's like, it's not just cut and dry and black and white or whatever else. It's like these things all have to function together to make this one unit move correctly. So
people make a lot of
just because you found something. Just because you found a section that you like, I like movement. Okay, just admit you like movement, but don't sit there and preach the gospel to me that it's all about movement.
It's also, it's like, bodybuilders are weak. Really, Tom Platz is weak. The guy squatted 500 pounds 30 times easily. The full squat too, not parallel. Straight up. Yeah, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman. You look at all the elite bodybuilders; they're all strong.
I know exactly.
But I think there's just ways for people to try to feel better. Well, I remember when Pavel started blowing up, he attracted this demographic of people who wanted to be strong, but they didn't want to look like they worked out at all. Like there's some kind of secret weapon. They're like, I don't even want people to know I worked out. I want to surprise them.
Maybe he was attracting people who actually wanted to be muscular and strong, but tried to be muscular their whole life, but couldn't. So maybe they were looking for a justification to be strong, but not be muscular. So they made it cool to be strong, but don't look the part. See what I mean?
But the reality is you're not even that strong either. Yeah. You're strong in the context of that community because that's the reference. But you take the person outside of that community is like, okay, big deal. Like, I can do a Turkish get-up with 70 pounds in. The bodybuilder at the gym couldn't do it. I was like, yeah, but that guy can squat 500 and you can't squat 200.
No,
you find these esoteric exercises that nobody does.
You invent stuff
you're putting
to be good at
kettlebells on a
because
broom
you can't be good at the basic stuff.
You're doing bench press with kettlebells on a broomstick, buddy. You can't talk okay. And you think that you're like, well, I don't want to do conventional bench press. You might want to try. Okay. So.
Now, if you can't be good at the basics, you have no business like coming up with another
conversation. Yeah.
We could say squat, deadlift, overhead press. You should have some pretty respectable numbers on those before you start branching out to all of the other fun exercises.
Yeah, exactly. It's the basic movement pattern: the squat, the hinge, the overhead press,
pull-ups, bend over row.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with those.
If you don't do these, you don't know what your weaknesses are.
Right.
And it's all about, in my mind, whether you're a CrossFit athlete, you're a football player, you're a mixed martial artist, you're a bodybuilder, it's all about building the best body possible. And you can't do that if you can't spot your weaknesses and do everything possible to fix those weaknesses.
Right. And the funny thing, though, is you have to reach a certain level of strength before those weaknesses even reveal themselves. Because when you start off, you're just weak, period. You don't have a weak leg. You're just weak.
Exactly.
So let's not worry about weak links until you get some numbers on there.
No, it's funny. I was as mentioned, I was training last weekend, Canada Strong. Well, actually, I trained the two strongest men in Canada and in strongman. And GF, Caron, the strongest man in Canada, he owns his own gym, and he was telling me, this kid walked up to me and said, well, how do you get big traps? Because he has humongous traps. And he answered, well, it's funny in French, but it's loosely translated in just lift heavy shit. That's basically the secret. The kid probably expected 5 different shrug variations.
Right.
He actually never did a single shrug in his life. But the guy deadlifts 965. He flipped a 1,300-pound tire 4 times. And he's one of the best in the world at the farmer's walk. In his training, he does heavy farmer's walk twice a week. That's always in his training. That's how and he deadlifts in the 900. That's how you build traps.
Right.
Just lift.
Yeah, that's the other thing people don't really get is frequency. I only hit the gym twice a week. I have a squat day and a deadlift day, and then I do different upper body stuff after those.
Yeah.
Basically Wednesday and Saturday. Other days I'm just walking a lot with the dogs. I do kettlebell pressing during the day. I just got a weight vest, so I can start wearing that when I go for the walks with the dogs, etc. And I think people are like, "Oh man, you're only doing squats once a week. You're only doing
but you train the whole body twice a week."
Right, yeah. Exactly.
And on top of the other work you're doing.
And also the intensity of those workouts is pretty high, so it's not something I want to do, more than once a week.
Right.
But,
I don't want to do heavy deadlifts 3 times a week.
Frequency, it's a funny thing. It's a funny animal. Because what are we talking about? Is it the frequency that every muscle is being trained? Is it the frequency of training session in a week? Because, for example, if a bodybuilder trains 6 days a week, but only hit each muscle once a week, is he using a high frequency, really? If somebody only trains 3 times a week, but using a whole body workout, who has the highest frequency? See what I mean? Yeah. And if you're being physically active, like walking with a weight vest, doing kibi press, you basically using your muscles every single day. So that's still
it's still stress in your body. Like one of my neighbors was saying, it's like, I do lower body on Monday, and then I do upper body on Tuesday. And I was like, you
cut yourself in half.
Well, you're still stressing the nervous system regardless. So in other words, you're just like, okay, you did lower body on Monday. That doesn't mean your upper body is fully recovered and ready to go the next day. Your nervous system is taxed, which is going to hamper performance.
But it always depends on how hard I'll go on a limb, though, that's saying that most people, they don't know how to train, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I'm assuming this guy's training hard, period. I'm sure he isn't.
That is a big assumption.
Looking at him, it's clearly not the case. But
I would say that probably 10% in the population trains hard enough to get any kind of worthwhile gains.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. We can see that at every gym. People look exactly the same year after year after year. But they're not pushing it hard enough.
They're lifting the exact same weight they did last January. But you
know what their problem is, right? I mean, you will have 2 things happen. People don't have the capacity to train hard enough on the exercises they're doing to stimulate gains. So they will do one of 2 things. They either start doing tons of volume to compensate for their lack of intensity, or they do tons of frequency to compensate for the lack of it. Now, I'm all for high frequency, provided that it's not a crutch to allow you not to train hard. But if you train hard and you train frequently, you can't train a lot.
Right.
You can't do a high volume. But most people use a high volume because it's easier. It's weird to say that high volume is easier, but it's because people, if you do a high volume, it's impossible to train hard. By hard, I mean pushing everything to the limit.
10 sets, how hard can it be if you can do 10 sets with the same weight?
Exactly. So but people would rather do that than do a really high intensity quality set.
Well, I mean, when you're doing a really heavy weight, it never becomes comfortable. And so what I mean by that is, okay, the first time I ever deadlifted 505, I was like, I barely did it. Now I can deadlift 565, but guess what? 505 still feels heavy. It doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
It's not. It's 50 pounds lighter than my 1 rep max, but it doesn't feel easy when I do it. It's still very taxing on the body. But the difference is I'm now trained to handle that discomfort.
But what I find is that with heavy weights, it doesn't take many repetition or many sets to reach what I call the point of refusal. Point where you look at the barbell and you just don't want to do that set, right?
Exactly.
So that's a point of refusal. And to me, that means that the nervous system is taxed and you shouldn't attempt that lift. But with bodybuilding, like high volume work, you don't get that point of refusal. And to me, that indicates that it's not like really demanding training. Because if you reach that point of refusal, it's the body rebelling against what you're asking it to do. So if you don't reach that point when doing strength work, to me, the nervous system is not being taxed. So you don't always want it, but when it happens, it means that you taxed it. So you need to be able to recognize it. Hello?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. One of my dogs was, like the water bowl was.
By the way.
Sorry, what's that?
What breed of dogs do you have?
4 dogs over here. So one's a Cocker Spaniel. He's the oldest guy. He's 16, coming on 17. I've got a Terrier mix. That's my buddy Grover. New puppy. She's a Australian Shepherd. She's only about 5 months.
Oh, they're awesome.
Edition. Yeah. Then a Maltese. So it's a real spread. It's a real wide spectrum of dogs here.
I'm a pug man, so well, I would actually like to have an English Bulldog also.
Well, that's what I have. I have an English Bulldog and I have a Basenji.
These are awesome, man.
Yeah, man. He's a handful.
How much does he weigh?
They're both 50 pounds, and it's so funny because you have it's kind of funny. It looks like if you would see like Mike and me together, we weigh about the same, but Mike's like a little bit longer and leaner, and I'm more like I got the center of gravity and the mass.
Hey, people have dogs that look like them.
Right. So yeah, my dog Grover looks like me. Black and white goatee. He's athletic.
I have 4 pugs, so I'm short, stocky. I snore and I fart.
Well, you got to stop eating. It sounds like you're still eating too much protein, then.
No, to be honest, if I don't train and I don't eat, I'm still going to be like 200. It's like I've had periods where I don't train that hard, don't eat that much, and I'm still like 195, 200.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen.
My normal body weight is I actually wrote an article about that. My body weight is 215. I can like force myself to be like 218, 220. I can get really lean and I'll be 200, but my normal walking weight is 215. And regardless of the type of training I'm doing, I will be 215. So what my conclusion is this: once you reach your ceiling for how much muscle mass your body can carry, because there is such a thing. You can actually change the way the body looks, because I think that the body, you can lose some muscle in a place you don't use it to build an area that's being more stimulated today. But really, when you reach a point where you're pretty much close to your limit, you have to train the way you enjoy it, because it's not like you're going to make drastic visual changes anyway. So you should focus on making the body as functional as possible, improving performance, and reaching performance goals at one point is more achievable and keeps you much more sane than always trying to focus on the visual changes. Because at one point, except getting leaner, you're not going to make much significant
Much more significant. I think performance should always be the focus. I mean, it doesn't have to be the only focus, but it's the most motivating focus, in my opinion, because what's more motivating than lifting more weight than you could before?
Well, and it's objective. It's objective.
Yeah, exactly.
If you feel like crap, if you feel like crap, you can look at yourself, I'm fat today. I'm feeling flat today because I'm dehydrated. But if you lifted 555, then you know it's 555. And when I did that cleanse, I did felt smaller because I did lose like 10 pounds, mostly water weight. So I felt like I'm losing muscle, man. Then I'm beating my PR by 20 pounds. So I said, well, objectively, I can't be losing muscle because I'm stronger.
Right.
Yeah, Christian,
that's funny. Whenever I lift more, people automatically assume you're bigger, and they're like, "Oh, how much size did you put on?" I go, "I didn't put on any more size."
No.
You know?
Hey, Christian, I'm pretty much like in a similar situation like you are. Did you ever notice that, like for a while there, probably for a while, like 215 was like right there for me. No matter what I would do, it got there. But did you ever notice, like, even if you did tend to like lose, let's just say water weight or whatever, like now I'm 10 pounds less, but everything still looks the same.
Yeah,
it's like your body still looks, no matter where it was, like it still looks exactly the same to the point, except like in your face. That's the only thing. Like my mother-in-law was like, "Oh my God, you're losing weight." I'm like, "Really?" And she's like, "Well, your face is slimming, but the rest of me looks the same." I'm just like, "Oh, okay."
I was at a funeral last weekend for my grandmother's, and it was just at the end of my cleanse, so I dropped like 10 pounds of water. And then I mentioned that to my brother, and said, I feel like I'm not getting smaller. So you look exactly the same. But he said, you always look exactly the same. So when I was younger, it would actually hurt my feelings. But when you think about it, that's pretty cool. That means I'm doing something right because I'm getting older. I'm 40, and I'm looking the same way. But that's the thing, though, and that's a lie that the internet is selling to you. The fact that we can all be like bodybuilding champion. No, we can't. I mean, people easily accept that not everybody is meant to be an NBA player. Now, I'm 5'8". I'll never be a basketball player. That's fine. But people don't have the same perception about muscular size. And performance, you can improve it a lot further along than how much muscle you can carry because of neurological aspects, for example. But not everybody is meant to have tons of muscle. Everybody can look good, but that's mostly a matter of getting lean. I mean, at one point, you will be limited in the amount of muscle you can carry, and the only way to really change the way you look is getting leaner while preserving muscle mass. But you can still make tremendous improvement in performance. And by improving performance, you actually change the way the body looks. Not by increasing muscle mass, but making everything flow a bit better. Improving the tone of your muscles. Improving the way you carry yourself. But, let's be honest. If everybody could keep on piling on muscle, everybody who has been training for 20 years would look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
So we have to be realistic about what.
And even Arnold doesn't look like Arnold used to.
No, exactly.
No, I mean, even
black and white photos about him. Not looking at how he looks now.
People often think that if you have an increase in performance, then it must be predicated on your muscles getting bigger. When they don't realize that it could be your technique improved, it could be your nervous system improved, your
recovery is a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Your recovery is a lot better. You're more confident. Confidence is better. So as a result of your confidence being better, you can pull more now. And then, what's funny, contrast, a lot of times people give CrossFit a hard time for some of the technique flaws. But on the flip side of that, we have these technique Nazis out there that drive me nuts, where they just go around the internet criticizing people's technique. Of course, there's no picture of them or any video of them doing anything. And when you meet these kind of people in person, the people that are just, okay, everything's about technique. All you got to do is master technique, and man, everything else falls in place. And that's not true. That's not true because, you know what? If you have great technique with light weights, that shows competency. But if you have great technique with really heavy weights, that shows mastery. And there's a big difference between the two. I don't care how great your technique is, until you lift heavy weights and get used to the discomfort, like especially with deadlifts, of lifting really heavy weights, you're not going to be strong.
No. I mean, take anybody, even people who have never lifted a weight in their life, and have them squat an empty barbell. Coach them for 10 minutes, and they can have pretty much perfect squatting technique, provided that they don't have an injury. So it doesn't require much work to squat perfectly but it does require a lot of work to squat well with a heavy weight.
Right. Well, you'll see some dipshit where someone's deadlifting 900 pounds and some jack off is like, oh, his back is rounding. It's like, yeah, it's 900 pounds, dipshit. The fact that his body didn't break in half is impressive.
Exactly. If you can actually lift 900 without tearing a muscle, you're not doing something like completely wrong.
Right, exactly. The fact you actually did it without dying is, success. You got these. It's just people making excuses for not lifting heavy. It's like, well, I focus on technique. I don't worry about how much I lift. Like, yeah, that's why you're weak.
Nobody doesn't care about what they lift. I don't care what they
Absolutely, exactly. Why are you doing this then? To show how great your technique is?
No, exactly. I'm only, well. So that if your technique is I can only have it one way. Now, if you say that I don't care about how strong I am, I only work technique. So that means that right now you're still working on technique, which means your technique is not perfect yet. You're criticizing somebody's form.
Yeah, exactly.
Or your technique is already perfect, then why are you training?
Yeah, how long does it take to get good technique?
And it's perfect, then there's nothing to improve on.
Right, exactly. You can only improve technique to a point, right? I mean, you can get really good at deadlift technique, and maybe you can get a little bit better, but it's so insignificant. It's not really worth prioritizing. Where working on something else would be more useful. It's like, okay, I've got this down. This is, like you said, this is my weak area, so I'm going to address that now, and then come back to deadlift.
Yeah, at one point you need to fix weak points to improve technique. But I was talking to a good friend of mine. He's a chiropractor, and we were talking about activation, movement correction, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The thing is that your body has a natural tendency to function in a certain way, like doing a certain movement pattern using specific muscle and muscle recruitment patterns. And you can't really change that. I mean, you can correct weaknesses to prevent your body from having break points. But you always will have a tendency to like deadlift a certain way, and you can work on technique to correct the flaws. But once you are under heavy load, the body will always move toward its natural tendencies. You can work toward making it tighter. Like instead of having like, let's say 20% deviation from perfect form, you're only going to have 5%. But we all have our natural tendencies, and we can only correct them to a certain point. So the best thing is to correct muscle weaknesses so that they don't become injury points when you have that deviation that you can't never move away from. Why do you think elite powerlifters are still working on perfecting technique after 20 years of lifting? It's because it cannot ever reach the perfect model. But instead of focusing on trying to correct it, accept that you will always be like 5% off and make the weak link stronger so that you don't break under heavy stress.
Right.
And
I mean, Mark Philippi.
Correcting your weaknesses is the best way to improve technique.
Yeah, one example of that is Mark Philippi would often recommend bicep curls, not for bigger arms, but as a preventative for bicep tears when deadlifting.
Most biceps tears occur when you're deadlifting.
Yeah, exactly. So, especially those of us who don't use the overhand, double overhand, which is most people. Most of us use it.
Exactly.
Mark always recommends
the
overhand. Overhand where you crush the thumb. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, I've done that for ever since I always lifted for Olympic weightlifting, so I've always used a hook grip for everything. So I'm not capable of using like an over-under grip. I'm not comfortable doing it.
I can't straighten out my left arm fully because I've got bone-on-bone arthritis in my left elbow. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that overhand, forget it, man. It's way more painful. I mean, it's just painful right away, even with the lightweight, for me to do that. It just exacerbates it. Where using a palm-up grip on that arm and then overhand on my right arm, that just feels more comfortable. I don't feel any pain in that area or anything. Yeah.
But I think it just goes to show that there is not a perfect technique.
Right.
To me, good technique is a continuum. It's not a line. Yeah. It has to fall in a certain zone that is what I would say the zone that allows you to perform optimally without putting you at risk of injury. That is the proper technique zone.
That's right.
If you get out of that, of course, then it's bad because it's inefficient or it's more likely to get you injured. But you should not.
So when people say, I know what works for me, it's like, well, you don't have the performance to back that up. So apparently you don't know what works for you because you're weak.
If it worked, you'd be stronger.
Right. You have to have some respectable numbers to back up a statement like, I know exactly what works for me. It's like, all right, let's see what you got. Like your definition of what works is quite a bit different than my definition of what works.
But again, it's funny because that is typically a guy thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking only up guys when I said it.
Every guy knows.
They don't want to take advice, man. Even from a guy who's a lot stronger than them, they're just reluctant to take advice.
I'm good, man.
Taking steroids.
Well, when Mark Philippi gave me advice, I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said and apply it right away, but I shut up and listened to what he had to say, and I let it sink in. Like, okay, let me listen to what he has to say. And because it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best move for me to go, but the fact that he's taking the time to give me advice, I should hear it out because it may be useful now or may be useful later, maybe not be useful ever, but it's still worth listening to and being open-minded to it.
Yeah, because he has reached a level that obviously knows that. But you know the thing with these super strong guys, though, that's the one thing, and not just necessarily the strong guys, but the elite level guys, even the coaches. Right. Oftentimes, it's funny. They know what works, but they don't know what works. Ask them what is their secret. They're going to give you an answer, but it's never the actual answer. But they don't know that. They actually think that what they're telling you is the secret, because what is working, they do it instinctively. That's what makes them so good.
Right.
But they don't know that it is what's working. They don't know how to explain it. So they think, well, I did that works, so that's my secret. So that's why the best way to learn from somebody is not to listen to them, is to watch them train.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. A lot of times people can't. A lot of times we don't, especially when something comes easily. When something comes easily to us, like people would always ask me, how'd you work up to heavy one-arm kettlebell snatches? And honestly, I was pretty good at that the first time I ever tried it. So working up to heavy numbers came quickly. So I don't really have great advice for someone who's not good at it on how to work up to that, because I didn't go through that curve. Now with pressing, it's different. I wasn't a good presser at all, overhead pressing with kettlebells. Those I really sucked at. So I can give a much better advice there on how to get good at it, because I wasn't good starting off.
And that's very important, that people tend to look at the strongest people at one lift for advice, whereas sometimes it's probably going to be the worst advice possible.
Right.
So
just do it. Just do it.
For example, the bench press. I was always good at the bench press when I was younger. Now, my best bench press is 445 at 220, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's very
But
good.
I can't bench press anymore now because I sucked at the bench press. I mean, I was good at it because I was strong.
Right.
I had good leverage. Yeah. But because of that, I never learned the proper form, and I messed up my shoulders.
Right.
But if you ask me how to improve your deadlift, then I'm going to be helpful, because I was always bad at the deadlift. I had to work extra hard to reach decent numbers because my leverages are super bad. So I had to find every possible strategy to make my deadlift go up. But on the bench press,
I've spent so much time. Yeah, exactly. I've spent so much time deconstructing the deadlift and working on it and studying it and researching it that now when I give other people tips, it comes really fast. Like I just watch them do one rep. I know exactly what they need to work on. Like just like the way Mark Philippi looked at me when I first came to him. It's like, I'm not saying I'm as good as he is with assessing, but it's really fast now for me. I can just look at 3 different people deadlifting and quickly give them instruction on what they need to work on.
Yeah, and I think also that comes from 2 things. First, it can be, again, that you were bad at one thing, so you really needed to learn it, or you are passionate about something. Because if you're passionate about something, then you're going to research it, even if you're good at it. So the best combination is being passionate and being bad. Now, that's a good teacher.
Yeah, with the deadlift, I was good enough to be good at it, but to be okay at it without ever really studying it, right? So in other words, just brute determination, I was able to lift a pretty good, what most would consider a pretty good weight. But I wasn't able to get coming on 3 times body weight now until I really got good at studying technique and all the little fine points of it. So like 5 years ago, if someone asked me for deadlift advice, it wouldn't have been good advice. Now, if they ask me for advice on it, I feel like I could give really good advice.
But being decently strong is a good place to be at, though, because it's oftentimes, if you're really, really, really bad at something, oftentimes you'll just drop it from your program.
Yeah, no doubt.
But if you're good enough to enjoy a lift, then you're going to be like motivated when you train it. If I'm really bad at something, then every time it's my program, then I don't want to do it. If you're good enough to be motivated, you're good enough to get gains from a workout. Because if you're not motivated by a lift, you can study it. You can find out all the best assistance exercises in the world, the best program. If you hate doing that movement, you will not get stronger in that movement.
No, so true. I didn't start getting good at squats until I started enjoying the move. Now I look forward to doing squats. Now that I found the lower bar placement and it feels good, now I'm like, fuck yeah, man, let's hit the squats.
Exactly. If you are not looking forward to training a lift, then you're not going to progress on it.
Right.
So that's why I believe that the best system is the type of training that you actually enjoy doing. Of course, that's something that you just do like easy breezy training that you can do while chatting about your weekend. But it has to be a type of, I'm a low rep guy. If you tell me, if you told me that if you do 3 sets of 20 reps on squat, you will squat 300 pounds more at the end of the year, I would not do that program. Even if it was guaranteed that I would squat 300 pounds more, because I would not enjoy it.
Oh, it's terrible, man. High rep squats, those are the worst. Those are just puking. They get that pukey feeling. Even if you haven't eaten anything for a couple hours, this was a horrible
even
feeling.
high reps curls are bad because I get bored.
Like really heavy low rep squats though. Like I'm just doing lots of sets of 1 on squats and deadlifts now. I love it, man.
That's what I do. That's what I do.
Yeah, it just feels perfect.
I normally, and you talked about that, and it's funny because it resonated with me because that was before the actual call. But when we talked before, because that's exactly how I train my big lift. It's between 5 and 10 singles. That's how I train my big lift. And I'll do my volume and assistance work, like sets of 3 and 5 reps.
Especially if you're trying to improve your 1 rep max, then why are you doing lots of sets of 5? Yeah, why are you doing lots of sets of 5? Only the first rep of those 5 is going to carry over. The other 4 are going to have minimal carryover. Yeah, exactly. Especially on deadlift. Squats, maybe 3 reps or more is going to help you with that 1. But even there, lots of sets of 1, just getting used to being comfortable with heavy weights, not light weights. Yeah, it allows you to go really heavy. Without burning out either. Now, that's the other thing here. If I'm doing 5 sets of 5 with 505 pounds, that's going to have a tremendous toll on me. I'm going to be wiped out for 2 weeks.
People need to understand that when we're talking singles, that doesn't mean that it's all-out effort. It could be like 92%.
Yeah, exactly. Heavy enough that it'll transfer over, but light enough that you can actually get some practice in.
Correct. It's strength skill. You're being good at displaying maximum strength. Most people, I do volume work. Well, to me, volume is 5 reps. 3 to 5 reps, I do that on assistance work that are less demanding on the nervous system.
Yeah, that's what I call the fun stuff. Whenever I work, I'm like, okay, you got to do deadlifts, and then the fun starts.
And it's never planned in advance.
You do squats, and then it's party time. You get those squats out of the way, it's time to have some fun now. You got a big smile on your face, you go do some fun stuff now.
And I never plan it in advance. And I know what I want to work. For example, let's say that today my training session was my overhead press session. So I knew that I was doing a military press as my I actually did like 7 singles. Then I wanted to do 2 exercises to improve that. I didn't know what I was going to work on when I walked in, but I knew it would be some form of assistance pressing exercise. So I did 3 sets of 5 with cambered bar overhead press. Then I finished up with the bamboo bar overhead press just to work on shoulder stability. So it was 2 other pressing exercises. I didn't know what they were before doing the session, but based on how my performance was on the overhead press, I decided, well, these movements will feel good. My last pressing session, so that was like 5 days ago, I still did my overhead press, 7 singles, but my 2 assistance exercises was a log press for 5 reps, 3 sets of 5. Then I did partial overhead press from pins for 3 sets of 5. So same main movement, but felt like doing different assistance exercises.
Yeah, I like the idea of being spontaneous. In other words, you have a plan with the primary exercise, and then you're spontaneous. I like that because the other day I was doing heavy deadlifts, and my plan was to do heavy double kettlebell swings afterwards, but my hands were pretty tore up after the deadlifts. Obviously, I cut it out and just did glute ham raise instead, which felt great. So I like that idea of not having to be so meticulous about the assistance.
You just need what you need to accomplish.
Right,
I want to work. I believe that to be good at deadlifting, be good at overhead pressing, be good at the bench press, be good at squat, you have to do the movement itself. Yeah, so that's a given. Yeah. I don't change the big movement myself. I understand that some people like to not do the main movement. They do a variation of it and they change every 3 weeks. That's fine. I don't do that.
Yeah, I never got into that either.
I need to practice the main movement if I want to be good at it. I mean, if I stop doing, let's say,
Charlie Francis was like that, right? Charlie Francis always had his athletes doing bench press, squat, deadlift, and they would just change reps and intensity, but you were always doing those 3 moves.
Absolutely. I mean, personally, I was deadlifting sumo for a while, so recently I focused more on conventional deadlifting. And I didn't do sumos for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, which is not that long considering I've been lifting for about 25 years.
Yeah.
So yesterday I was at a new gym. I didn't know I was supposed to be doing squat from pins, but they didn't have the pins. So I said, well, I'm going to do deadlift instead. And I tried sumo, and it felt completely wrong. Completely wrong. I went back to conventional, felt much easier. And I've been pulling sumo for about 2 years. But I stopped for 5 weeks, and it felt completely odd.
It's amazing how your body just adapts to something different and then basically forgets what you did. You could have been working on it forever, and then you go back after a couple of weeks, like you said, and it just feels totally alien.
Yeah, so I prefer to keep that one main movement constant all the time, but the assistance work varies. And I believe that, as long as you are working on weakness, it will work.
Yeah, I was going to do the small lift squat program, give myself a break from deadlift. I know. That's why I decided not to do it. I looked into it a little bit further. I was like, this is not a good fit for me. And also, I decided I don't want to go that long without deadlifting because, man, I'm going to be totally out of the pocket by the time I come back.
Right.
I'm 20 pounds away from my goal on the deadlift. Last thing I want to do is cut it out for several months.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that program because, about 3 years ago, it was like the big thing in the CrossFit circle. And I worked with a lot of CrossFit athletes. I mean, that's probably my biggest clientele. And because I worked with them for the Olympic lift, for example.
Yeah.
And for 3 years ago, doing Smolov was like the big thing in CrossFit. Like they use the Smolov Junior, which is only 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And I've seen probably like 30 or 40 people do it. I would say that 1/3 had good results. 1/3 had no results.
I'm glad you're telling me this.
Lost strength.
Yeah, this is good to hear.
The thing is that those who got great results were those who were injured. Like CrossFit athletes that had shoulder injuries.
Okay.
So they couldn't do anything but squat, and they made great progress. Those who kept on doing their regular CrossFit workout lost squatting strength. And those who were smart enough to decrease but still did some CrossFit work basically stayed unchanged or had very little progress. That Smolov thing, it's so tremendously stressful on the nervous system that if you do any kind of other neurological exercises, you will lose the benefits from the program.
Yeah, and I just don't care about improving the squat that much that I'm willing to make it priority. And plus, I don't think you have to take it to that extreme for me to hit my squat goal. Like, I want to hit 5 plates this year. I'm at 455, so 40 pounds. I don't need to go to that extreme to hit that goal. I can do that with the program I put together for myself.
As long as you keep practicing the squat and getting the muscles involved in the squat stronger, then you will reach that goal.
Right.
You don't need a specialized program. And I'll tell you my own personal experience with specialization programs. They work, but you lose the strength. I mean, 3 years ago, I did a specialization program for 3 weeks on the snatch grip eye pull. So basically every single 5 days a week I would do a form of explosive pull, even snatch grip high pull, snatch grip low pull, clean grip pull, for example. And in 3 weeks I was able to go from 125 kilos to 180 kilos, and that's to about clavicle height. That's a pretty strong pull. But 3 weeks after that, I was barely able to get 160, and that's even if I was getting stronger. And I haven't been able to hit anything over 165 since then. Even though I got stronger on squats, got stronger on deadlift, got stronger on presses. The fact that I stopped practicing my high pull, I just lost the strength. So specialization program gets you really strong for a brief period of time as long as you keep that motor pattern grooved in. So it's good for transient strength gains.
Right. It's amazing how specific things are too. Like with these practice sets I do with kettlebell pressing, where I'll do sets throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I'll find that it improves my one set performance. But if I start doing, let's say, 5 sets of 5 or something like that, it doesn't even carry over to that. In other words, my ability to repeat performance with short breaks in between sets, because now I'm used to having an hour or more in between each execution.
And
when you go to 3 minutes, there's a big drop-off point.
But actually, and I would actually go out on a limb and say that your multi-set performance might actually drop. And the reason is that, think about it this way. That's actually truer for more bodybuilding or strength movement. The more efficient you become at recruiting muscles involved in a lift, the earlier you recruit the fast switch fibers, right? If I'm more efficient at recruiting a muscle, it means I'm turning on those fast switch fibers much more easily, right? Now, if I'm turning on those fast switch fibers earlier in the set, it means I'm creating more fatigue. So technically, my multi-rep performance will actually drop down, not because I'm weaker, but because I'm getting those fast switch fibers involved much sooner, and since they're not fatigue resistant, then they will drop off much sooner. So after 3 reps, for example, they're already fatigued, whereas in the past, they would not kick in before that 3rd rep. So you were able to get 3, 6, 7, 8 reps because the fast switch fibers were not fatiguing as quickly.
Right.
So that's
there's such a level of precision with everything that I think that's why it's always marketing hyperbole whenever someone talks about, this will carry over to that. You'll have the what the hell effect. That's one thing they always talked about in Dragon Door. It's like, you use kettlebells, you get the what the hell effect. You get 20 pounds, your bench press goes up magically, your sprinting gets better, your pull-ups get better. Like, come on. Maybe for someone who's never done any of those things. Like not someone who's a good bench presser or a good sprinter or a good pull-up executioner or whatever you want to call it, practitioner. Not someone who's good at those things. The only reason it may go up is maybe you overtrain those moves, so you're getting a break from it, doing something else for a couple of weeks, so when you come back, you're more fresh.
Or if, for example, if you never did any work requiring stability. So let's say, for example, at one point I specialized on gymnastic rings, right?
Yeah.
And actually that did improve my bench press, even though I stopped bench pressing. Well, I was still bench pressing like once a week for maintenance. And my strength did go up because my stability was really low because I always used very fixed movement patterns. Yeah. But after a while, it didn't lead to further improvement. It's just because it addressed a specific weakness. It's not so much that the rings will improve bench press performance on everybody. It did for me because it fixed a problem.
Right.
It's all about fixing problems while maintaining or improving technique on the big lifts.
Yeah, I was able to get an improvement in my kettlebell overhead pressing by doing John Hines' TNT cable device, right? So it has that resistance curve where it gets more intense as you get closer to lockout.
Yeah.
So obviously I wasn't used to that sensation. So when I did that for a while and then went back to kettlebell pressing, and also you can hold the handles in a way where you can make the groove extremely precise to where it will be with kettlebells. When I went back to kettlebells, you just had this feeling of the weights just flying off from start to finish because you've never done that forced acceleration training before.
No,
and the band's really helping with that.
You trained something that was untrained. So it made everything stronger because you fixed a weakness.
Yeah, and you can't do forced acceleration with free weights. It has to be some kind of device such as resistance bands. Some machines also work the same way, right? The machine gets heavier as you get closer to lockout. That would be another way to do it. But it has to be some kind of device like that.
Yeah, otherwise the body instinctively decelerates before it hits the hand of the random.
Yeah. It was a really interesting sensation, though. You just felt like there were hot air balloons, the way they would just fly right off. It was pretty cool.
Well, actually, it's funny because I remember one training session I did. It was on the overhead press. So I did strict presses with resistance band, like kind of like a West Side kind of thing. And I did like 12 sets of 2 reps, kind of like the speed work, but with fairly heavy weight. And I said, well, I'm still going to practice my regular presses just not to lose the feeling of the movement. The first 2 sets, it felt like the weight, actually, as you just mentioned, it stopped feeling like anything once I got past the 90 degrees. But in the beginning, the weight felt like it was 2,000 pounds, even though it was fairly light.
Interesting.
So the closer a movement is to the actual movement you're doing, the more negative adaptations you can have. So that's why I don't always like bands, because it
the TNT cable band is different because it's very difficult from the very start. You know, it's not like it's easy from the start to eye level and then it gets harder. It's extremely difficult to get it. Yeah, it's extremely difficult to get it moving. Period.
Okay, so it just basically means that the whole range of motion is demanding.
The whole concentric portion is extremely difficult. There is no negative, right? The bands want to come down easily, but taking it from start to finish is extremely difficult from the start to the finish.
Yeah, that would work. Otherwise, that's the one. I never really like bands because I'm personally very, very, very explosive. And I can use a stretch reflex really efficiently. So I can actually, with bands, create so much acceleration at the start when it's relatively unloaded that the bands actually don't do much for me because the acceleration is beating the band. But to me, it doesn't do anything because I'm already explosive. So it doesn't work on something that needs improving. For me, lifts from pins work a lot better because it's taking away the explosiveness. It's taking away the stretch reflex. To me, that makes me stronger because it's
addressing. So starting right where your sticking point is, for example. Let's say my sticking point is at chin level. I put the bar right there on the pins and then initiate from there.
Yeah. Now you need I don't care what method you use as long as it's addressing a weakness of yours. Right.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, with the TNT cable, the only reason I don't use it anymore is because the starting point is so stressful on my left elbow. It's just not comfortable anymore because, those bands, just getting them into position, just stretching them from where you're standing on them on your feet to right below the chin. That is not easy to do. Just get it in place. You're shaking like crazy the first time you ever do it because it requires so much stabilization. That's the other thing that it helps with. That it feels difficult before you even start pressing. It's not like it's easy and then it gets harder. It's difficult right from the get-go.
I get a feeling,
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's something I've recommended to a lot of people over the years, especially for people who travel a lot because you can put it in a suitcase, take it anywhere you want. When I used to go overseas a lot, I would take it with me and I would be able to keep practicing my pressing in the hotel room or wherever because I just had that device. It's light, it's portable. You can use it for other things too. So, you're not going to get the best workout in the world just doing bands, but it's better than nothing.
No, but actually bands are awesome because you can at least maintain some muscle tone, some strength. It's not perfect, but it's better than not doing anything.
That's right. Yeah, it's better than just body weight because there's some external resistance at least that you're working against.
Body weight, it's not that I don't like body weight exercises. Some are great, but you don't get the same feeling. You don't. Get the feeling as resistance.
Even when I used to do a lot of handstand push-ups between chairs and all that, people were always like, oh, man, get really good at handstand push-ups between chairs. Your military press is going to go through the roof. It didn't.
No,
handstand push-ups went through the roof.
Yeah, exactly. I got really good at handstand push-ups, too. I couldn't wait to go to the gym. I was like, man, I'm so good at these. I'm using my own body weight on handstand push-ups. I was expecting like 135 to feel extremely light. As I worked up to heavier weights, I could barely press that because it had been so long. I was like,
only
man,
if you can lift that upside down, man.
No, I know. I work with a CrossFit guy, and he needed to improve his strict handstand push-up, and we were able to, like a specialized program working only on the handstand push-ups. He went from 11 strict handstand push-up to 23 from a deficit. So with about 8 inches blocks, he was doing 23 reps, but his strict military press did not change. And he more than tripled his performance on handstands.
At least it didn't change, though.
Mine
actually went down, and I was doing like 15 handstand push-ups between chairs. Yeah, it actually went down. But you know what? That's me though. I'm not someone who has these magic carries over. If I don't work on something, I'm going to lose it.
I'm exactly the same way.
Even if I'm working on something similar, if I work on barbell overhead press for 6 months and then I decide to go back to kettlebell pressing, I'm going to suck at kettlebell pressing because it's a totally different group, and vice versa. That's just the way I am. I'm not someone who has these magic transfers.
I'm the same way you are, and I think that you are making such an important point that some people, because I don't know if it's because they have the motor skill, but they have much easier time transferring strength gain from one lift to the other. I don't. Yeah. That's why personally, and I love Louis Simmons stuff. I love his science. I never was able to get strong using Westside barbell. Because I need to practice something to be good at it. I can't rotate my lift and expect my performance to go up.
I remember one time I was talking about handstand push-ups, and my friend John Hines was there, and he's a big body weight training guy. And he's like, "Oh man, how much did your pressing improve with handstand push-ups?" And he had all of his students there too, so he was expecting me to say it went through the roof, so that he could turn to his students and be like, "See?" And then I was like, it didn't move up at all. And then he had this look on his face of like disappointment. And he quickly changed the subject. I knew where he was trying to lead me too. I was like, nope, not going there, dude. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I don't think he wanted me to lie for him, but he was hoping that my honest response would be like, "Oh yeah, man, my barbell press went through the roof."
Beat 2 records.
Well, especially people who do handstand push-ups where they're just touching the top of their head to the floor. It's just a partial range. That's definitely not going to improve your military press.
That's not working the weakest part of the range of motion.
And then you're doing it against a wall, so there's not as much stabilization. So there's so many factors. I could understand maybe freestanding, and I was doing them against a wall, to be clear, too. I wasn't doing freestanding on a park or somewhere. Yeah. I was doing them against a wall between chairs, but there's so much less stabilization that you still have to stabilize. It's not like it's easy, but it's a lot less than doing it freestanding.
Yeah. But I think that this whole conversation, the one point that everybody should be taking out of it is that some people naturally can transfer gains from one movement to the other. Some people can't. Some people need to practice the main lift all the time. Some people don't need to do that. Paul Carter, my good friend, for example, doesn't need to deadlift to improve his deadlift. If I don't deadlift, my deadlift doesn't go up.
Well, I'll give you an example of a good friend of Sincere's and mine, Steve Cotter. He's really good at one-legged squats. He may be the best in the world at one-legged squats. And he can use 2 70-pound kettlebells and bang out reps on the one-legged squat. And he's really good at barbell squat, too. I mean, he would be even better if he actually worked on it. But with never working on it, he could squat double body weight or more anytime he wants without practicing it. And I know a lot of other people that are pretty good at one-legged squats, almost as good as he is, and they're not good at all at barbell squats. Yeah. They can do reps with 2 50-pound kettlebells. They can't squat twice body weight. Barbell squat twice body weight. So it's just one of those things where that people are like, "Oh man, if I get really good at one-legged squats, it's going to carry over to two-legged," and often that's not the case. It's a totally different skill set.
And it's not necessarily a matter of having weak points, because, for example, let's say that. Myself, for example, I say that my core is very, very strong. So people could say, well, if your front squat's going up and your back squat is not going up, it's because your core is weak. For example, your lower back is weak. No, it's not, because it's very strong. So it's just that if I don't back squat, my back squat doesn't go up. It's funny because at the moment I'm doing only like Frankenstein squats from pins and Zercher squat from pins. I'm not doing any back squat. I actually did some back squat last week just to see, and actually my Frankenstein squat, which is a front squat without ends, actually felt, and I use only the same weight. I basically let's say I did let's say I did a 385 Zercher squat. Well, I put on 385 on back squat, and it felt harder than the 385 on the Zercher. Normally I should be able to. Just because I stopped, it was still easy, but it felt heavy because I stopped back squatting.
It feels heavy. That's the sensation more than anything else. It's just that feeling of, whoa, this feels heavy.
I have the muscle strength to lift it up, but I couldn't. Right. You would expect, my Zercher, for example, went from 315 to 395. So you'd expect my squat to go by 50 pounds. It wouldn't.
Right.
Actually, I would have to work from starting a new cycle on squat for 6 weeks for it to go up. But some people will have that direct transfer. Some people don't. And it's not a matter of weak links. It's a matter of some people have the neurological setup to be able to be good at transferring strength from one movement to the other. Some
people people have high levels of acetylcholine, their brain chemical. Those are people who pick up things quickly.
That makes sense. Because I know that I'm deficient in acetylcholine because one of the supplements that works the best for me is alpha GPC, which indicates that my acetylcholine is deficient because it increases it. So that would make sense.
Yeah. Right. Well, a lot of us are I'm more dopamine driven. That's why I always want a reward with the workout. I have a goal in the workout and I want to achieve it. That's something that's important to me with each session. It doesn't have to be a PR, but it has to be something, some kind of success.
Right.
Well, acetylcholine, I don't learn things. Yeah, I don't learn things quickly, and I don't get bored easily either. I can do those same moves over and over again without it becoming tedious. Some people make poor assessments though, like you just did, talking about the core. I'll have people go, "Oh man, you need to work on your core, but otherwise that's why your back is rounding." I was like, "Man, I can do dragon flags all day long. I don't need to work on my core. I can do dragon flags. I can do standing ab wheel rollouts. I can do all that shit."
It goes back to what I was saying. I think that we all have our naturally efficient movement pattern, and we tend to rely on those when we go heavy. We can force ourselves to get out of our regular path with light weights, but when we get heavy, we go to a natural tendency. But round back deadlifting is not necessarily a bad thing. Many elite deadlifters deadlift that way as long as it stays in that position.
Yeah, Bob Peoples purposely let that happen because he said it was a waste of energy to try to hold your back in a certain position.
But it has to start rounded. If it start arch and it ends up rounded, then you're probably doing something wrong. But if it starts neutral or rounded, then
I'm definitely not starting arched. I'm starting. I wouldn't say I'm excessively rounded either. I'll send you a clip. Actually, I'd like to get your feedback. I did a recent PR in the deadlift. I'll send it over to you for your feedback. But it's a slight rounding, and it doesn't become excessively rounded as I go either. It just stays with the slight rounding.
When I do conventional, I have a very slight rounding.
Right.
And
I think when you're using that alternating grip, it makes it harder to not be a little bit rounded as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I can imagine.
I think people who have that overhand grip with the thumbs locked in, I think a lot of those people tend to be a little bit more in that arched position.
Yeah. And that's
pretty much you can have that bar slide happening, and then it's kind of like that.
Right.
Oh shit! Let me grab the bar at the last minute, where you have at least one of those hands supporting, with the undergrip. You got a little bit of a base, a platform of support under that bar to push it up and give you a little bit of support to get things going. And so that's like one of the reasons why I tend to gravitate, to the over and under compared to both overhand grips. So because I feel that slip. It's like, okay, I got to put more chalk on because one thing about once you feel that thing slip, it kind of screws everything up mentally.
But it's actually, it's because of the homunculus. The homunculus is the neural representation of your body and your brain, and your hands is the region that has the highest place in your nervous system. So anything that affects how your hands are feeling during a movement affect the movement pattern. So the moment your hands are either hurting. Like let's say when you have like an open callus, for example, either it's like hurting or you feel like a very slight slip. Actually, you might have like plenty of grip strength left, but you still feel like just a little bit of sliding. It will negatively affect your movement pattern because your hands are sending so many signals to your nervous system that you don't have the resources to properly coordinate the movement pattern. Right. So that's why in CrossFit, for example, when I work with CrossFit athletes, I would rather have them use straps than deadlift or do the Olympic lifts with calluses open because the perception of their hands will negatively affect their movement pattern, quality of movement, because it will take up too much nervous energy just to process the signal being sent from your hands.
You can always tell when someone's hands are slipping.
In kettlebell training, we always talk about, the proprioceptors in the hands. And because you always have people just starting off with kettlebell training. Of course, they've seen people with their hands ripped. So you have a lot of people coming up with gloves, which I was like, no, you don't want to wear those gloves because, you want to make sure that your hands are getting the signals that it needs to hold that handle the correct way.
Yeah, and actually the way your hands feel is one of the best way to know if your nervous system is tired, if it's efficient or not. If you start a workout, deadlift workout, you have like 135 just for warm-up, and the bar feels heavy in your hands, then you know your nervous system is either not activated or burned out. So
yeah, exactly.
because the grip strength is the first thing that goes when the nervous system is fried and or also not activated or not ready to work.
Exactly. So you hear that, ladies? When he's touching you, he's just trying to send the signal to the brain, send the signal to other places. Hey. So that's all it is. So, yeah, man. See, this is the type of stuff that people need to hear at the beginning of the year, and not all this other crap. By getting to the gym and starting their 90-day program and going to lose all this other stuff within that time, and then hey, that's all you need to do is just turn it on, just push play, and all the other crap.
No, I was asked for an article because it's the end of the holidays, right? The New Year resolution crowd. What is your best tip to be motivated for the new year? I say, well, if you need a resolution to start working out, then you're not going to stick with it.
Right.
You have to get into the habit of training way before the new year. If you start training with the new year, you will not stick with it. It has to be something that's, the motivation has to come from a passion from training, a passion for improving. I mean, really, why are we training? It's to improve. Doing work and then seeing the results, either by performance or look. But that has to come from you being passionate about making positive changes, not for other people, because I mentioned that earlier, and that is the honest-to-God truth. Nobody cares about you. Nobody. Nobody on social media cares that you have benched 50 pounds more. They might click like and make a positive comment because it requires zero effort. And as you pointed out, many people make comment just to get attention. Right. Those people will find a way to get that discussion back to themselves. But people don't care. So the only reason why you should be training is yourself, because that's the only person that cares about what's happening.
Yeah. And no one should care more than you do about your own
that's your life.
I mean, come on. No one should be making the goals for you. Why don't you have your own goals? Why do you have to ask someone what your goals should be?
You should be the lead actor in your own movie, not the supporting actor in somebody else.
Right. That's exactly right. It's funny you were talking about the grip with deadlift. I was just thinking about how you can always tell when someone's about to lose the bar because the second they get the lockout, they immediately lower. Right? That bar comes. They don't fixate the lockout and hold it for a second. They lower that bar so fast, like it's almost falling out of their hands.
Trust me. When you make a big deadlift, you're proud of lifting. You stick at the top for a few seconds.
Oh, I want to make sure everyone saw.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't just deadlift. I held that for like 10 seconds. I was like, yeah, folks, look, motherfucker. Exactly. I didn't get it. No one helped me get this here.
Anyway,
it's so true. You want to enjoy that feeling of like, man, I just pulled this off, and I'm going to hold on to it for a minute. This feels good.
Yeah, exactly. It's good for the core.
Yeah. It just kind of solidifies that you actually did it, right? Like if you lock it out and then you have to lower it immediately. Yeah, exactly. You want to feel like you mastered it, like you crushed it. You don't want to barely get it and then it's about to fall out of your hands, so you lower it as fast as you can before it drops. That doesn't
the first thing
give you confidence.
Does it count?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
When you're doing a PR squat, and the first thing you ask is, was it low enough? Then no, it's not low enough.
Well, what's funny is someone who's never seen low position squats before, they don't really get it. They think it's a good morning, and they're like, oh, does that even count? Like I had one guy telling me that. I was like, look, motherfucker, I was looking at the mirror in front of me when I was squatting. I know how deep I got, right? It's like, yeah, my back probably was in a position that made you uncomfortable because you have a weak back. I don't have a weak back, and I didn't feel it in my back either. The bar's in my center of mass. So a lot of times people just misunderstand things. They don't really understand what they're seeing.
No, exactly. That's why I like to train by myself in a facility that nobody trains.
Right.
No, it's funny because sometimes we do things, and people who have no understanding, he's just doing some crazy stuff and he doesn't know how to lift. Well, if I'm doing, for example, I never would do good mornings in a crowded gym because people don't understand what a good morning is. That guy doesn't know how to squat. No, I'm doing I've trained more pro athletes than you know by heart. So I've trained athletes, and I don't know how to squat.
Well, I don't know why anyone would look at you and say you don't know what you're doing, because you obviously, you have a an impressive physique. Because anyone who looks at you should be like, you know what, that guy's doing some crazy shit, but he definitely knows what he's doing.
Will always find a way.
Yeah, but then again, you have many like douchebags who have good physiques, who are good upper bodies.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't mean you know what you're doing, but it's also a sign that you have achieved something of merit, because you wouldn't be able to get there. Yeah, definitely. That's the other mistake a lot of people make, is they overqualify people with their physiques too much. Yeah. They're like, well, shit, he knows what he's doing, I'm going to hire him. It's like, well, he knows what works for him. He doesn't necessarily know what's going to work for you. That's a different skill set.
Yeah, and it also goes back to what you were saying when you mentioned that when you did kettlebell snatches, it came naturally to you. But some people just are born with gift for having good physiques, or they use drugs to get there. So that doesn't mean that they can understand how an average person can train to look better. But again, what I mentioned is that you should always train mostly to improve performance and diet for looks, because it is my honest opinion that regardless of how you train, regardless of the training methods you use in the gym when it comes to strength training, after 10, 15 years of intense training, you will look like you're designed to look muscle-wise. Yeah. Even if you train for powerlifting, you train for bodybuilding, your body will carry the amount of muscle mass it is designed to carry after 10 to 15 years of hardcore training. So it doesn't really matter the type of training you do, as long as it's hard and it's intense and it's smart. But the type itself has little bearing on how you look, in my opinion. Yeah. Diet has a lot more to do with how you look. So basically, train to function, perform better. And if you want to look better, just eat a little less.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. And that's advice where I'll have people email me on articles I wrote 14 years ago, which I don't necessarily agree with anymore, but I still have to address it. So someone will be like, I read your article on high octane cardio. It's not that I don't think those are good workouts, but I framed those workouts as this is great for fat loss back then. Yeah. And now my attitude is more, look, you can get lean on any workout regimen you want if the nutrition is there. I can do powerlifting, low reps, and if my diet is accordingly good, I'm going to get as lean as I want. And to contrast that, you can do those high octane cardio workouts, and if your diet sucks, you're not going to get lean. It's going to be to no avail.
100%.
So but in terms of improving conditioning, those programs are great. I've just had to frame it differently now with just a greater understanding than what I would do then. Then I'm coming in with the naive notion that a lot of people have, novices, chase reps in order to get lean.
Yeah.
Just do more work, you'll get lean.
That's the best recipe for being a hormonal disaster.
Yeah.
Doing too much volume to compensate for a bad diet.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want to be a normal mess, that's the solution right there.
Well, that's someone who has a lot of guilty issues, right? Like, in other words, they'll eat a donut and then they go jump on the treadmill. It's like, well, Jesus Christ, man.
Well, actually, if I eat a donut, first of all, it won't be one donut. It will be 12.
Yeah, exactly. No one just has one.
And I want to go squatting because I said, well, I just messed up health-wise. I messed up fat-wise. At least I'm going to get some performance out of it. I'm going to retain all that water from the inflammation. That's going to cushion my joints. I'm at least going to be strong. I might have a heart attack during the set, but at least I'm going to be squatting heavy.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Charles Poliquin who wrote, he's like, I think all of us trainers should admit our guilty pleasure meals, and his was Dunkin' Donuts with milk or something like that. And I had to be honest, man, I was like, I don't have those kind of problems, dude. I don't have guilt when it comes to food. I eat healthy, not because I'm forcing myself to, because I actually want to. And if I deviate from that, to me, it's just fun. I don't have any guilt over it whatsoever.
I think that the best secret, because you know just as well as I do, is that the only people who have long-term success changing their body are those who don't do diets. They change their habits. That's the only way to get really long-lasting results. But the only way to make real changes in your habit is to actually enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy or find a way to enjoy the taste of healthy food, then you're just going to go back to eating crap because you don't enjoy eating healthy. And there's an alternative, which is eating crap that is readily available to you, and it's actually less expensive.
And it's going to give you the payoff. It's going to give you the immediate payoff. Yeah, it'll give you the payoff you're looking for right now. That's what makes it so compelling for people is if I go eat this donut, I'm going to get this payoff every single time. That's going to be there.
Yeah, and you both have the serotonin increase, and some actually get dopamine increase because they feel like it's the same. Now, eating something that's forbidden leads to the same hormonal rush as doing something that is forbidden. The forbidden fruit is actually a real phenomenon and releases dopamine.
Like, I'm cheating on my diet. I'm a bad girl. I'm cheating on my diet.
You're an idiot.
Sitting all aroused in the car eating that croissant. I'm a bad girl.
I'm going to be so pissed off.
It's like, fuck you, salad. I'm having this. Can't tell me what I can do.
That's the boss of me.
I think anytime food is used as a narcotic, there's always an underlying reason. It's not because there's something there that you're trying. There's some problem you're trying to cover up or whatever it is. That's why your behavior is manifesting this way.
Yeah, no, just like for the same reason that when people have emotional issues, they turn to food because of the serotonin increase. It just makes them feel better and actually numbs the pain. So if I
can always tell when my brother's stressed because he'll go to Whole Foods and get like 10 boxes of vegan cookies. And he's like, he kills 3 bags in 20 minutes. Like, all right, what are you dealing with?
They're vegan cookies, so they're good for you, right?
Yeah, that's the mistake a lot of us who eat vegan diets make too. Is they're like, well, it's vegan, so I can eat vegan.
Well, technically, isn't Dunkin' Donut vegan? When you think about
it. So is beer.
I don't know if
there's no meat in a donut.
No, Dunkin', no, it's not. It's not.
Well, shit. Technically, McDonald's hamburger is vegan these days.
Yeah, because if you want to tell the truth about it,
it's not healthy, but there's very little meat in
it.
They're like, shit. It's a lot easier to make a fake hamburger than a real one. These guys just chase the money. They're not. Supporting factory farms because they feel good about hurting animals. They're doing it because they're making a cheap product. So if they can make an even cheaper product by doing something else, believe me, they'll do that and increase their profit margin. They're like, oh, this is better for the environment. Let's go this way. They're like, no, it's better for our stockholders.
That's still the spin they're going to use, though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anytime a corporation can try to put some kind of humanitarian spin on anything they do, they're going to go for it. They're not going to help Jimmy, the cancer kid, without the cameras being around.
No, of course not. Of course not.
It's like Meryl Streep with her little speech at the Golden Globes, man. It's like, come on, Meryl. It's like, let's see you say that when the camera's not on.
It's like, you get rid of all of us. You just have MMA and you have football, and that's not art. I'm like, tell it to an MMA fighter in his face. Come on, say that in front of Ronda Rousey's face. Especially right now, the way she's feeling.
Well, right now, if Meryl Streep...
Well, if Meryl Streep can throw a punch, if Meryl Streep can throw a punch sincere, she'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. She can probably handle it.
All Meryl has to do is crack Ronda in the nose, man. She'll be all right.
Just one punch. That's all it takes. I think that Meryl Streep does have pretty good range. I think so. I think
she's a great actress. Man. She's a great, but it's just funny to me when these actresses try to be more than that. They
I was
talking
like, okay, punching range.
She's about a punching range.
Punching range. Okay. Yeah, she may have great range there too.
So I like to tell Amanda Nunes that and give her that same speech.
Yeah.
Well, it was dumb for her to. It was dumb for her to add that to that sentence. If she said that sentence without throwing that in there, it's like why
you were doing so well.
Why are you? Yeah, why are you ostracizing 2 groups who have nothing to do with what you're saying here unnecessarily? You're just
and that pretty much all Americans like at least one or the other.
Right.
But the best thing was to actually look at Vince Vaughn's face when he was looking at it, like, can someone please shut her the hell up? Because he was just looking like, really? Why is she talking so much?
Well, at the same time, Donald Trump's tweets are embarrassing, man. He's like fucking giving Schwarzenegger a hard time over it was like, oh, your ratings aren't very good, Apprentice. I was like, come on, Mr. President. You have something else to do?
Turn your TV off and your Twitter account, okay?
Meryl Streep is, she's not a very good actress. Like, look, man, you can't slam her on that. She's a great actress. She's
you know what?
She's overrated. She's not overrated. You got to see something else.
Yeah, she could have taken a page out of his book. Wrong. You're not wrong.
I was like, yeah, this is what I want. I want the president on Twitter arguing with people.
Oh my God, having a Twitter war with Meryl Streep.
That's a great use of time, man.
Well, we're in Canada, we're just as bad. Now we have Justin Trudeau, who's the selfie boy. So he can selfie with anybody, with everybody.
Oh man,
that's not better.
Yeah, it's just the way things are going to be for a while. This is just
straight
the
cult
world
of personalities now. You don't have any real world leaders now. It's just all these personalities.
Well, you have Putin.
Exactly. Yeah, Putin.
When the most normal world leader is Putin, then you have a problem.
Exactly. When he's trolling all these other leaders, it's just like, okay, yeah, you can keep saying that. You're just making me look good, buddy. It's like, come on. To the point where people are celebrating Castro. That's what you got to say something about your. You got to say something about your leadership when your own people are celebrating. When your people in the so-called free world are celebrating Castro's death, like he was a great leader. Like, wait a minute.
Our Prime Minister Trudeau, when Castro died, it took him 3 hours to make a positive comment on social media. When they had the terrorist attack in Berlin. It took him 4 days to make a comment on the situation. And
does he have a bad internet connection? I mean,
probably. I mean, of course, the government doesn't have any decent internet, right?
No, but it's just amazing to me what people will comment on. But I'll use it to get my agenda out there. So when I see people arguing on this stuff, I'm like, what's more important than this, folks? Helping Project Child Safe. Go help my friend Ty Ritter rescue kids that are in sex slavery. It's like, what are people going to say to that? Oh, fuck you, Mike. We don't want to hear that shit. I mean, that's probably what they're thinking, but they can't say it.
No,
because I'm talking about rescuing kids, man. So there's no way you're not going to look like an asshole. Yeah, exactly. There's no way you can argue with me and not look like a dickhead. So it's always
they don't want to sit there and be like, I don't want to look like a bigger asshole than Donald Trump. Like, so I'm just going to be quiet.
So sometimes, like on Facebook, I'll put up something. Like I put up this post about fat shaming, which is not something I care about one way or the other. But I knew it would get a lot of attention, right? And sure enough, it did. It's like 50 people posting, and they're going back and forth, blah 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 blah, pro and con. And then I was like, what's really sad, folks? I go, this post is getting more than all of the posts I put up on Project Child Save and saving kids from sex slavery together. And then, of course, no one responds to that.
And
not one person. Yeah. And then one guy who's a cool guy, he's a listener of our show, Sincere, and he gets on there, Al, and he's like, a lot of people just find this. He's like, I don't agree with it, but a lot of people just find this too tough a subject to deal with. I was like, yeah, because they're fucking pussies. That's the problem there. It's like, I don't want to hear about these kids suffering. It makes me feel bad. I was like, well, I don't care about how you feel about it. Let's focus on how they're feeling. People always have to bring back everything to them. Well, this is how it makes me feel. It's like, well, get over yourself, dipshit.
I'll go back to my original point. Nobody cares about you.
Exactly.
Right. Start from that point, and normally
that sounds like a good book. Nobody cares about you.
Exactly.
I think probably Dennis Leary would write that book, probably.
Yeah, you could have a whole bit on that.
Probably did.
Yeah, it's so true, man. Well, hey, man, it's always a pleasure to have you. It's always great that you're so generous with your time. We're coming on over 2 hours here, so we don't want to keep you all day. But what do you have coming up we know you have a lot going on this year. Is there anything that's imminent, something coming up soon?
Well, my next trip is in Poland, so that's at the end of the week.
Oh, cool.
At the end of the month, sorry.
Whereabouts in Poland?
Pardon?
Whereabouts in Poland are you going?
Wrocław.
Okay.
But I have a pretty busy year, so it would be too long to mention all the dates. That's going to be on my website at tibarme.com anyway.
I'm sure they'll like you, and then you'll be back again and again and again.
Yes.
That's my Joanna. That's my bad. That's my bad Joanna Jędrzejczyk imitation there, Polish girl.
Sabina does not approve, Mike.
No, that was. I have a pretty good Polish imitation. That's just working. I'm just having an off moment.
That part of the show was supposed to be about me, man.
See?
Come on.
No one cares about you, Christian. Come on.
I'm
confident. I'm confident they'll come back to you. Yeah, so you have the course coming up in Poland, and then what else after? No, I'm sure people don't. I'm just trying to make you feel good. I mean, no one's listening at this point. They've already shut
No, exactly. It got boring, like when the political stuff started.
They're like, well, shit, I only listen to Sincere on the show for the free info he's putting out. I don't want to have to actually pay anything. I don't want to have to pay Mike, Sincere, and Christian.
Kicked in now, so they didn't stick around long enough, man. So.
I was like, I don't want to pay any of these three guys for their advice. That's what the show's for. I always say, look, man, if you're a fan of my free information, you should be a fan of my paid information too.
No, because I only give you like the used stuff, the one that everybody knows about. The really cool stuff, then it's the paying stuff.
Well, if someone's been a fan for 10 years, they should have bought something from you. That's always my point.
Exactly.
Well,
I understand.
Really work like that, really?
If you just became a fan last week, I get it. Maybe you're taking your time delving into what I have out there.
Hey, man, long-time fan of the show, man. Like, really? I don't see your name on this Patreon list at all.
Well, it's like someone who's like, oh, man, I can't believe my favorite band stopped performing. I was like, I'll tell you why they stopped performing. Because you never buy their music, you don't buy their T-shirts, you don't go to their shows. So what do you think they're going to do?
Exactly.
You're listening to all their music on YouTube, and then you're like, oh, these guys can't make a career? It's like, no, they can't.
And that's the thing. Personally, I would actually do every single thing for free. I mean, I just love talking, training, and helping people. But at one point, I mean, we all have to make a living.
Exactly.
I mean, you want people to value what you're saying, too. And the bottom line is they're not necessarily going to value it because they're paying for it, but they're definitely not going to value it if they're not paying for it. That's just a reality.
They'll pay a little bit more attention to it when there's, it's going on that credit card statement.
Right.
Especially if they have a partner, you got to justify that. Like, okay, so you went to this course, and what did you get out of it? You're still fat, you're not strong, and the sex still sucks. So what did you learn?
Well, I mean, the first time you were on the show. The first time you're on the show, Christian, people are like, oh, man, that was great. I hope you guys get him back again soon. I was like, why? You applied everything that he conveyed on that first episode? I'll just spend the rest of the year working on that stuff.
Well, to be honest, and that's people in general, and not just like your show, it's like any podcast or any seminar, if they can take like one thing and apply it properly, then I've done my job. That's enough for me. Because most
people like collecting things to apply, but they don't like applying it because that's a lot harder. They want to know all this shit.
The internet.
Yeah, exactly. They want to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
Info hoarders.
They don't want to. They don't want to know from experience, though.
No, it's the yes but phenomenon. They go on the internet.
We talk about that all the time.
That guy Thibadeau said that.
Yeah, but the whole but crew.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, they're just info hoarders, man. This is like they're like the Walmart of info.
You know what's the worst? You know what's the worst about that, Thibadeau? And Mike, you mentioned that earlier. When people start quoting you to argue against yourself.
Oh, I know. That sounds familiar.
Like, wait a minute, I said it. No, you didn't. Yes,
you wrote that 15 years ago.
That was episode 112. What are you talking about? I said.
Well, no, you're right, Christian. Like they'll try to like, well, you're a hypocrite because back in 2001 you said this. I was like, no, I'm not a hypocrite. I've just learned a few fucking things since then.
I'm an evolutionist, dude. I evolved since then.
I stopped learning in 1997. Trading has not evolved since then.
How sad would it be if all I can say now is what I was doing 20 years ago? That would be pretty pathetic.
No, exactly. I didn't learn a single thing. I basically wasted my time for the last 20 years.
No, I put a post of me deadlifting or something. People are like, oh man, I didn't realize you did anything other than kettlebells. I was like, you didn't? I only did kettlebell only for between 2002 and 2006. And even then I was doing body weights and sprinting and other stuff. 2006 I started adding stuff back in, but I don't even teach kettlebells anymore. And you thought all I do is kettlebells? It's like catch up, man. It's like you're on my Facebook page, so obviously you follow my work to some extent. You think that you would have caught that at some point.
Last I heard, I think you should just start being a vegan, right?
No, I've been a vegan since
I know, that's
okay. Yeah, that's good. That would be really funny if someone jumped on there and said that.
So you're vegan? So then they stopped listening to you.
I should be like, well, I do have human meat every once in a while, but besides that, no animal meat. But,
and you eat at McDonald's, which counts.
Yeah. There you go. I'm opposed to animal suffering, but human suffering, not so much. Because they make me suffer.
I only eat people. I take the Hannibal Lecter approach. I only eat people I don't like. You pissed me off, or you were rude. If you're a cool guy, you have nothing to worry about. Hannibal Lecter is not going to just kill anybody. You got to be a jerk.
Oh, you can edit all that stuff out, right?
No. We can, but we won't.
Well, you need a blooper episode at one point.
We need something. Our friend Prince Bell goes for long walks listening to this episode, so we don't want him to be shortchanged. His 10-mile walks.
He's gonna have his
we need this episode to last long enough for those walks.
Exactly.
Can I go now?
Yes, you can. We all should.
Hit the brick.
Thanks a lot, man. We won't ask you to be back on the show anytime soon. Don't worry.
Well, at least wait a few months. I have something something to say.
Sounds good. Hey, great having you on, man. Always a pleasure.
Great.
Take care.
All
right. Take care. Have a good one. Bye. Yeah, so anyway, Christian Thibadeau, he's got a great website. I think his website is Tib Army now. Check that out, tibarmy.com, or just check him out on Twitter if that's incorrect. But we
have the links in the show notes.
Yeah, he has a lot of excellent information out there. So get to one of his courses, buy one of his videos, get one of his ebooks. Definitely support people that are working so hard to put out great information, such as us, with these episodes. Exactly. So make sure you go to our website, use that coupon code LLA, but go beyond that because, that's supporting our respective businesses. That's not necessarily supporting the show directly. You want to support the show directly, you got to be a Patreon supporter.
Exactly. And you have to go over to patreon.com/LLA podcast. And there are different levels over there. Pick a level, get on board, and truly support the show 100% by doing that. All right. So other than that, make sure you also get the word out about these shows, man. Whether they are the free ones or even the Patreon episodes, you can share the link to that too, so other people can get on board and become a monthly subscriber as well. Make sure that you're sharing it on social media since you're already there. You might as well put it to good use and stop wasting your time liking all the butt shots that people keep putting up. It's not helping them, man. Think about yourself.
You're just reinforcing bad behaviors there.
Exactly. Remember, you got to do it for yourself. So that's why you need to go ahead and share this episode because this is your favorite show. So, yeah, make sure you promote it out there. Help us with this. So, yeah, make sure you do that on social media and on TuneIn, Stitcher, iTunes. Give those reviews. Let people know just how much you love your show because it's all about you. And let them know that, man. So, other than that, I've got nothing else.
I mean, we don't really give a fuck about you, like when we line up guests, but we want you to benefit from that. Like my dad was asked. My dad's like, "Oh, do you take surveys to find out what kind of people, who people want?" I was like, "I don't give a fuck who people want on the show." It is not like I'm saying F you to the audience. It's just like I'm focusing on people I know that you and I, Sincere, will be interested in when I go out to get people. Because if we're not interested, guess what? The audience is not going to be interested.
The audience is not going to be interested. So yeah. So even people they've never heard of is like, wow. It's like those guys sound like they had a good time, and then the audience has a good time. I can sit there and some people have people on their shows. I'm just like, and I'm moving on. So. If you're still listening now, that means you actually give a damn about this show.
We're not going to have a guy on for 2 hours if we don't enjoy talking to him. We're going to cut that off.
We won't even make it to 2 hours. We won't even make it to 2 hours. It's like, after a while, Mike's like, so what about you, Sincere? And then it's silent.
Yeah, that's always a bad sign.
Yeah, Sincere is like, he has the mic on mute and he's making coffee right now.
When someone who's as verbose as I am has to try to deflect to you and be like, "Hey, Sincere, you got anything to say?" That's bad because I usually have too much to say.
And usually my reply is like, "Nope, I'm good."
You hear Sincere shouting from the other room, "Nope, keep going.
I'm good, man."
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't had that in a long time. I mean, I can't really.
Probably since like the first.
I can't think of really the last time we had a boring guest. I mean, last year we had a really good year. Last year we just had so many good guests last year, for example, and so many good ones lined up this year. So fortunately, that's not something that happens often.
That was like from the early days, just kind of finding our
first
footing.
Year. Yeah,
exactly. So, and even then, I can only think of like maybe 2 or 3, and then out of those 3, you guys will never know because you never heard those episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
They never made it.
It's not like we air those episodes. If an episode sucks, it's not like we have an obligation to air it. We're not going to air that shit.
And then on the other one, it's just like, well, honestly, we didn't get a damn thing. We didn't get a chance to say a damn thing. It's just like the person just took over the whole show. It became like a marketing tool for them. It was like, okay, and that'll never happen again.
Right.
And kind of changed our perspective of that person as far as like seeing them now. It's like, okay, kind of lost a fan, buddy. So I wasn't expecting that. So it's like one of those things. It's one of those things I used to hate about being in the music industry. Is like all these artists that I love as a fan, but then once I started working with them and with the record label, and then actually, I had to take these guys around and babysit them. I end up like to the point now I can't even stand to even hear anything from them because all I can do is think about that experience that I had with them. Is like, or somebody's like, oh man, I love so and so. I was like, fuck that guy.
I've been fortunate that some of the bands I've looked up to, I've managed to actually know them, like Harley and the Cro-Mags, and Harley's a friend and he's a cool guy and someone that I've developed a nice friendship with. So I don't have that negative association with the Cro-Mags. But there's other bands I can think of where I met the person and I was like, man, that guy was a real dickhead. Like now you can't listen to the band anymore. You're like, on one hand, you want to know it because you don't want to support that. But on the other hand, it's kind of disappointing because you're like, man, I used to like listening to that band, but I can't do it now just in good faith, just in good conscience.
We'll catch you guys on the next premium episode. That's what's coming up next.
All right.
If you want to hear that, you know what you need to go do. Get over to Patreon, become a subscriber. Because pretty much for the most of the month, that's what you'll be hearing, premium episodes for all our subscribers. So, yeah, there you go. Get on it. All right, folks.
Yeah, get over there.
We're going to wrap it up. Catch you next time.
Take care, everyone.